The message in her pocket was signed with her father's name. He'd been dead for a year. It's 3 in the morning. Nefertari Boyd, 27, black, pulls a chauffeur's vest over her grease-stained coveralls. The garage her father built is one missed payment from the auctioneer, so she takes the night shift nobody wants. The passenger is Seo Jun-ho. They call him the Snow Wolf. Dark Phoenix inked down the left side of his neck, disappearing under the collar of a suit that costs more than the debt crushing her. A luxury watch, leather gloves, a signing worth $5 billion. She knows that Phoenix. She's seen it before. Then her hand brushes something under the dashboard. Small, cold, wired in where no wire belongs. A transmitter. Someone has been listening to every word this man says. At the hotel, a woman in copper accuses her of theft. A cryptographic key, gone. Nefertari finds it herself, sewn into the lining of her own bag. Then the wine hits her shoulders. But what she pulls from beneath that dashboard cracks open something 10 years buried. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. The impact wrench slipped, and Nefertari's knuckle split against the brake caliper. She swore once, low, and kept turning the bolt by hand. Blood beaded on the skin above her glove. She ignored it. The car on the lift belonged to a night shift nurse who needed it by 5, and it was already 10 past 3. She wiped the knuckle on her coveralls and reached for the torque wrench instead. The garage was cold. The big roll-up door had a gap at the bottom that no amount of weather strip ever sealed, and August in this part of the city still went sharp after midnight. She'd stopped noticing years ago. Her father had worked in this same cold for 30 years and never once turned on the space heater before 4. Heat's for finishing, Calvin used to say. Cold keeps you honest. She finished the brakes. She lowered the lift. She rolled the nurse's sedan out to the front bay and left the keys in a magnetic box under the wheel well, the way they always did for early pickups. Then she stood in the empty shop and let herself feel how tired she was. Boyd and Daughter Automotive. The sign out front still said it. Her father had it repainted the year Imara turned 18, back when he thought both girls would take it over. Imara had. Imara ran the front, the books, the customers. Nefertari ran the cars. That had been the arrangement for 6 years, since the funeral, and for 6 years it had almost worked. Almost. She looked at the corkboard by the office door. Invoices, a calendar, and pinned dead center, a letter she'd read so many times the folds had gone soft as cloth. She didn't take it down. She knew every line. The letter was from Meridian Recovery Partners. It was the 4th letter, and it was different from the first 3. And the difference was the thing that had been sitting in her chest for 11 days like a swallowed stone. The first 3 letters had come from a bank she understood. A bank had a phone number and a person named Sandra who answered it and said things like, "We can restructure," and "Let's find a path." Sandra had been almost kind. The 4th letter did not come from the bank. The 4th letter said the debt had been sold and assigned to Meridian Recovery Partners, and Meridian Recovery Partners did not have a Sandra. Meridian Recovery Partners had a case number and a date. The date was 19 days out. 19 days and then a thing called possession proceedings, which was a clean phrase for men in a truck coming to take the lifts, the compressor, the diagnostic rig, the building, the sign. Everything Calvin Boyd had spent 30 years bolting to the ground. She'd called the number on the letter twice. The first time a machine took her name. The second time, a man with a flat voice told her the account was in a fixed status, and there was nothing to discuss at the servicing level. When she asked who owned the debt now, who actually held it, the man said he wasn't able to share ownership information. Somebody had bought her father's life for pennies and wouldn't even put a name to it. She turned away from the corkboard. The office was where Imara lived, in a manner of speaking. Her sister's fingerprints were all over it, the labeled folders, the plant that somehow survived, the good chair. Nefertari sat in the good chair because Imara wasn't here to claim it. It was almost 4 in the morning. Imara had a 9-year-old and a husband on disability and a body that had given her 2 surgeries in 3 years, and she did not do the night shift. That was Nefertari's, all of it. and Nefertari had never once asked her sister to trade. She opened the bottom drawer of the desk. The box was there where it always was, pushed to the back under a stack of expired warranty binders. A plain cardboard box, the kind copy paper comes in, the lid taped down along one seam with packing tape gone yellow. Written on the top in her own handwriting, 6 years ago, in marker, DAD. She'd taped it shut the week after the funeral, and she had not opened it since. She looked at it now. She put her hand flat on the lid. She could feel the shape of things through the cardboard. A boot, maybe. The hard corner of a book. She knew what was in there without opening it, because she had been the one to pack it. His reading glasses. His watch that didn't run. The coveralls he'd died in, laundered by a cousin before anyone thought to ask her. A stack of letters bound with a rubber band that had probably rotted through by now. Her thumb found the edge of the tape. She didn't pull it. Instead, she pushed the box back into the drawer, behind the binders, and slid the drawer shut with her knee. Some things you kept closed because opening them cost more than you had that night. She had a nurse's card delivered and a transmission to look at before dawn, and a knuckle that had finally stopped bleeding, and the box could keep. The box had kept for 6 years. It could keep another day. She stood up too fast and the room tilted, and she put a hand on the desk until it settled. When was the last time she'd eaten? She couldn't build the answer. Yesterday there'd been coffee. There'd been half a sandwich from the gas station that Deacon left on the bench without saying anything, the way Deacon did things, sideways and generous. Her phone buzzed against her hip. She almost didn't look. At 4 in the morning, a buzzing phone was never good. But it might be the nurse, and she looked. It was a text from Imara. Just, "You still up?" And then, before Nefertari could answer, a second bubble. "Don't answer that. I know you are. Go home." Nefertari looked at the 2 lines for a long moment. Then she typed, "Almost done." Went home an hour ago and deleted it before sending, and typed instead, "Almost done." She hit send on the true half and left out the lie, which was its own kind of habit with them now. You gave your sister the piece she could carry and kept the rest. The reply came fast. "Love you," then a heart, then nothing. Nefertari set the phone face down on the desk. She hadn't told Imara about the 4th letter. That was the stone in her chest, right there, more than the date and more than the flat-voiced man. Imara didn't know the debt had changed hands. Imara thought it was still the bank, still Sandra, still a path. Nefertari had intercepted the mail for 11 days, got up early, walked to the box before Amara's husband did his slow morning shuffle to get it, and she had told herself she was protecting her sister, and she knew that was only half true. The other half was that she couldn't say the words out loud yet. Saying it made it real, and if it was real, then in 19 days her father's name came off the front of the building, and there was nothing, nothing at all, that Nefertari Boyd could do to stop it. She was the one who fixed things. That was the whole of who she was. A thing broke and she made it turn again. She had put her hands inside 1,000 dead machines and brought them back, and she could not fix this, and the not fixing sat on her wrong at a level she had no name for. She looked at the clock. 4:11. There was a transmission on the far bench, a Camry, customer named Ruiz, and she could get an hour into it before the light came up. Or, she could do the other thing. She looked at the hook by the office door. On the hook hung a garment bag, and inside the garment bag was the thing she tried not to think about as a solution, because thinking about it as a solution meant admitting the garage alone couldn't carry them anymore. 6 weeks ago, she'd done a favor for a man named Marcus Bell. Marcus drove for a livery company. Real work, private cars, airport runs, corporate accounts, and his own car had thrown a rod on the interstate at 11 at night, and he'd had Nefertari's number from a cousin of a cousin, and she'd gone out and towed him in and put him back on the road by dawn, and charged him half of what she should have. Marcus had looked at her hands, at the way she'd diagnosed the knock before she even had the hood up, and he'd said, "You ever want steady money, girl? The company's always short on people who show up sober and drive clean, nights especially." She'd laughed at the time. Then she'd gone home and done the math on 19 days, and she'd stopped laughing. She'd taken the orientation on a Tuesday when the garage was slow. She'd passed the background check clean, because Boyd's were always clean. That had cost Calvin plenty over the years, but he'd been proud of it. She'd gotten the license endorsement. And she'd gotten the uniform, which is what hung on the hook now in the garment bag, and she had worn it exactly twice. She unzipped the bag. White shirt with a structured collar, a black tie, already knotted, because she'd learned the knot from a video and left it tied so she'd never have to do it twice. A fitted black vest, black trousers, pressed. She'd pressed them herself, which had made her feel like an imposter and also like her mother, both at once. Black leather gloves folded in the inside pocket. Black shoes at the bottom of the bag, polished, that pinched. The nights paid. That was the thing. The nights paid better than the garage did most weeks, because at night the company ran the airport and the after-hours corporate accounts, the ones that came with waiting time and gratuities and long silent drives to the good part of the city. 2-3 nights a week on top of the shop, and she could throw real money at Meridian, could show them a payment history, could maybe, buy enough time to find someone who'd hear the word restructure again. It meant sleeping in pieces. Garage till 4, home for a few hours, uniform by evening. It meant Amara couldn't know, because Amara would say you're going to kill yourself and she would be a little bit right. Nefertari took the vest off the hanger. She was still in her coveralls, greased to the elbow, and she pulled the vest on right over them, over the graphite gray worksuit with the shop's emblem on the chest, and she stood there in the cold garage half mechanic and half chauffeur, and she caught her own reflection in the black glass of the office door. 2 women, that reflection, the one her father made and the one 19 days had made. She looked at them both. Then she took the vest off and folded it back over the hanger with more care than it needed and zipped the bag. Not tonight. Tonight was Ruiz's Camry. Tomorrow she'd call the dispatch line and put herself back on the board for the weekend, when the corporate runs were thick. Her hand went, without her deciding it, to the chest pocket of her coveralls. There was a folded paper in there. There had been a folded paper in there for 11 days, riding against her heart through every shift, and she took it out now the way she took it out most nights, not to read it, just to hold the weight of it. It was not a letter to anyone. That was the strange part, the part she wouldn't have been able to explain to Amara or Deacon or anyone living. One bad night, the worst night, after the 4th letter and the flat-voiced man, she had sat at this desk and written a page in her own hand, and she had folded it in 3, and she had carried it ever since. It was addressed to her sister. It started, "I need you to know it isn't your fault." It went on from there, and it was not, she was almost sure it was not, a note about doing anything to herself, though there had been an hour that night she couldn't swear to. It was more like a page you write so that if you disappeared into the work, into the nights, into the exhaustion, and never surfaced right again, at least the important thing was written down somewhere. It was permission. It said, "If I go down under this, sell the shop, don't drown with me, take Marcus's people something salvageable, and get out." It said the thing she could never say to Amara's face, which was that she loved her more than she loved the building, more than she loved the name on the sign, more than she loved being the one who fixed things. She never mailed it. She never would. It just lived in the pocket, folded soft as the corkboard letter, and some nights the 2 folded papers were the only things she was carrying that felt true. She put it back. Behind her, the side door scraped. Nefertari turned. Deacon came in sideways, the way he came in everywhere, a bag of something warm in one hand and his safety glasses shoved up on his forehead even though the sun wasn't up. 29 and built like a whip, quick-fingered, the best young hand she'd ever trained. He'd started as a kid sweeping the bays for Calvin. He stayed now for wages. Nefertari sometimes had to split into 2 envelopes a week late. "You're not supposed to be here," she said. "Neither are you." He set the bag on the bench. "Tacos, from the smell. Rosa's cousin does the overnight truck. Got you 3. He looked at her hands, at the split knuckle. "You bleeding on the customer's brakes?" "It's my blood. It's fine. That's not the—" He stopped. He knew better than to finish. He unwrapped his own taco and leaned against the bench and looked at her too long. Deacon looked at people the way she looked at engines, listening for the knock under the smooth. "You put in for the weekend?" he asked. She went still. She hadn't told him either, not in words. But Deacon had seen the garment bag, and Deacon could add, "How'd you know about the weekend?" "I didn't." He took a bite. "You just told me." She almost smiled. It almost got all the way to her mouth. "It's a few nights," she said. "Airport money. It's nothing." "Neff." He set the taco down. Whatever the thing is, the mail thing, the letters you're getting to before Miss Amara's Robert can shuffle out there. He held up a hand before she could deny it. I don't need to know. I'm just saying, when it's ready to be a two-person problem, I'm one of the two. She looked at him and had nothing to say that wouldn't come out wrong, so she picked up a taco and ate it standing, and it was the first real food she'd had in a day, and it nearly undid her. How good it was. How simple. A warm thing handed over in the cold by someone who'd showed up sober. She finished it. She balled the paper. She threw it dead center into the drum by the door. Ruiz's Camry, she said. Back to work, because work was the only floor she trusted to hold. Third gear's slipping. You want to learn something before the sun's up? Deacon grinned and pulled his glasses down. They rolled the Camry onto the lift together. Nefertari found the knock inside 4 minutes, the way she always did, hands and ear doing the thing that no diagnostic rig had ever done as fast. And for a little while, elbow to elbow with the kid her father had half raised. She was only a mechanic, only that, and the 2 folded papers rode quiet against her chest. And the box marked DAD stayed taped in the drawer, and the date was still 19 days out, which for 1 hour was the same as forever. While the Camry sat up on the lift, Deacon asked the question sideways, the way he asked everything that mattered. You ever think about what Calvin would do, he said, not looking up from the pan, about the letters. He'd fix it. She threaded the drain plug. That's what he did. Something broke, he made it turn again. Same as me. And if it didn't turn? She stopped. The wrench hung in her hand. Calvin Boyd had bailed men out of jail and never told his wife. He'd carried 3 families' accounts on credit through a bad winter and eaten the loss and called it church. He had a way of standing in the open bay door at dusk with his arms crossed, looking at the street like he owned the whole block, and everyone who drove past honked because everyone knew him. He'd been the man you brought a dead thing to. He had died at 57, with grease under his nails and a wrench in the toolbox that still had his palm shape worn into the handle, and he had never, not once, sat where Nefertari was sitting now, staring at a debt with a stranger's name where a person used to be. He never had it not turn, she said finally. That was his whole luck. 30 years, and the thing always turned. And you've had 6, Deacon said quietly, and you got a war. She didn't answer that. She torqued the plug and dropped the pan and told him to hand up the new filter, and he did, and the moment passed the way moments passed between them, absorbed into the work. But the question stayed in her, under the smooth knocking. She thought about Imara, about the phone face down on the desk with the heart still glowing on the screen somewhere under it, about the 9-year-old, her niece, who called her Auntie Neff and asked her to fix bicycle chains and thought the garage was a castle, about Robert, Imara's husband, who used to frame houses and now moved through their small home a half step at a time and apologized for it, and whose disability check came the 11th of every month and covered a third of what a family needed. Imara held all of that up with one hand and held the front counter with the other, and if the garage went, the counter went, and Nefertari did not have a picture in her head of what her sister looked like standing in a room with no counter to hold. That was why the vest. That was the whole of the vest. She'd told herself a dozen versions of it. Pride, duty, love, fear, and they were all true, and none of them was the bottom. The bottom was simpler, and it had no dignity in it at all. She was terrified. Not of the men in the truck. Of the moment she'd have to look Imara in the face and say, I couldn't fix it. She had spent her whole life being the one who could. Take that away and she genuinely did not know what was left standing in her own skin. So she'd drive strangers through the dark. She'd knot the tie, leave the tie knotted. She'd throw money she earned in the front seat at a company that wouldn't say its name, and she'd buy days, and days bought her the chance to find the person who'd say restructure one more time. Third gear, Deacon said, wiping down. You gonna tell me how you knew before we even pulled the pan? Sound of it going into second, she almost smiled. Ruiz rides the clutch. Man's been riding that clutch since the Clinton administration. You listen long enough, the car tells you the driver. You should teach that. Teach what? Listening. He shrugged, glasses fogging. Half the young guys can plug in the rig and read a code. Nobody can hear the thing anymore. You could teach that. Whole room of people who can hear it. She looked at him for a second longer than she meant to. It landed somewhere she wasn't ready to open, so she closed it. the way she closed the drawer, with her knee. "Finish the fluid," she said. "Sun's coming." The sun came up gray at the gap under the door. At 6, she sent Deacon home and did the books herself for an hour, which meant she moved numbers between columns like moving water uphill in her cupped hands. Then she stood in the front bay and watched the nurse come for her sedan. The woman pressed $40 extra into her palm and said, "You saved my whole week," and Nefertari took it, because $40 was $40 now, and hated a little that she took it. She locked up at 7. In the truck, she did not drive home. She sat in the lot with the engine off and took out her phone and pulled up the dispatch line, the livery company, the number Marcus had given her. Her thumb hovered. 2 nights. 3, if the weekend was thick, she'd wear the vest over nothing this time, no coveralls under it. She'd be all the way the other woman, the one who drove clean and showed up sober and kept her mouth shut in the front seat, while the good part of the city rode silent in the back. She thought about her father saying, "Heat's for finishing." She thought about the box. She thought about 19 days. She pressed call. It rang twice. A dispatcher answered, "Board." A woman with a headset somewhere across the river. Corporate line. "This is Boyd," Nefertari said. "Nefertari Boyd. I did orientation last month. I want to go back on the board. Nights and weekends. Whatever you've got." Keys clattered on the other end. "Boyd? Boyd? Yeah, you're cleared. You've got the endorsement. The physical's good." A pause, the sound of a screen scrolling. "We're actually short bad this weekend. You do late runs? Airport's easy money, but the corporate accounts are where the real gratuity is. Long waits, though. Sometimes you're sitting on a client half the night." "I'll take the corporate," Nefertari said. "The waits don't bother me." "All right," more clattering. "I'll pencil you Saturday. And listen, if anybody calls out, you'll be first on my list, so keep your phone on. We had a driver go down sick tonight, and I was scrambling till 2. Keep your phone on, got it." "Welcome back, Boyd." The line went dead. Nefertari sat with the phone in her lap, and the gray light coming up over the lot and the shop behind her, with her father's name still on it. She'd done the thing. She'd put herself on the board. In 2 days, she'd button the white shirt and knot. No, the knot was already tied. She'd pull on the vest and drive strangers through the dark for money to throw at a company that wouldn't tell her its own name. She started the truck. She did not yet know, could not have known, that the driver who called out sick, the one the dispatcher had scrambled to cover, would call out again, and that the second time, the run that came loose and fell to the first name on the list would not be an airport pickup or a silent ride for the quiet rich. It would be a signing, a car sent for a man who was closing a deal that changed everything, a man with a phoenix inked black down the left side of his throat, a man Nefertari Boyd had every reason in the world to believe she would never see again. She pulled out of the lot and drove home to sleep in pieces. The vest waited on its hook. The phone rang at 9:40 on Saturday night, and Nefertari answered it with a wrench still in her other hand. She was under the Boyd Bay lights again. Not at home, because home had become a place she visited to change clothes. The dispatcher's voice came fast, clipped, no greeting. "You dressed?" She set the wrench down on the fender towel. "Give me 20 minutes. "You've got 12. Papers moved on his end. "Bell's out. He called it in an hour ago. Sounded wrong, slurring. I sent someone to check on him, and the guy says Marcus can barely stand. Whatever he got into, he's not driving a car tonight." Nefertari wiped her hands on the rag hanging off her belt. Marcus. 6 weeks ago, he'd been the one steady thing, the man who fixed his own flat on the shoulder and laughed while she did it faster. "Is he okay?" "He's breathing." "He's an idiot, but he's breathing." A keyboard clattered. "Look, I don't have anybody else clean for this one. It's a signature run. High end. Airport quiet. Corporate wait. And the fare tips like the building's on fire. You want it, or you want me to wake up Dana and hope she's sober?" "I want it." "Then move. The car's the black one in row 2. Plate ends 44. Keys are in the box by dispatch. Address prints to your phone when you clock in. And Boyd." He paused. "Gloves on. This client checks." She hung up before he could add anything else. The vest came off its hook without ceremony. She'd hung it there 100 times in her head and taken it down twice for real, and both of those times had been small runs, sleepy suits going to the airport who never once looked at her face. This was different, and she felt the difference in her hands before she understood it. She stripped off the gray coverall in the office, hung it on the same nail, and pulled the white shirt over her head. Buttons, tie. She still needed the mirror for the knot, and her fingers moved slow, and she got it on the second try. The colored lint of the shop clung to her forearms, and she brushed it off before the gloves went on. Imara had left at 7. That was the only mercy in the timing. If Imara had still been at the front desk, she'd have seen the shirt and the tie and asked the question Nefertari didn't have an answer for yet. So she typed a text she didn't send. "Staying late? Don't wait up." And deleted it, because a text was a thread, and a thread could be pulled. She locked the shop. She drove her truck to the depot. She left it in the far corner and walked to row 2. The black sedan sat clean under the sodium lights, plate 44, waxed to a mirror. She circled it once out of habit, the way Calvin had taught her to walk a car before she trusted it, and her eye caught nothing wrong on the outside. Inside it smelled of leather conditioner and someone else's cologne. She adjusted the seat, the mirrors, checked the fuel, tested the brake against her foot before she ever turned the key. The address bloomed on her phone. A tower downtown, one of the glass ones, the kind with a name on the lease that meant nothing and money that meant everything. She drove. The lobby of the tower had a doorman who looked at her uniform, then at her face, then decided she was furniture. That was the job. Be furniture that drives. She pulled to the curb, and a man in a gray suit, not the client, a handler, earpiece, no tattoo, a face built to be forgotten, leaned to her window and told her they'd be down in 10. She nodded and killed the engine and waited with her gloved hands at rest on her thighs. 10 became 20. She didn't check the clock more than twice. A car that waits well earns more than a car that hurries. Then the glass doors opened and a small group came out fast, the way important people move when the important thing is already decided. And the handler pulled the rear door, and a man folded himself into her back seat without looking at her at all. She looked at him. She hadn't meant to. The mirror was right there, and her eyes went to it the way eyes go to motion, and she caught the side of his neck as he turned to say something to the handler still holding the door. Dark ink, climbing up out of the collar, curling toward the ear. A bird, wings that came apart into feathers of shadow, a shape she had seen once before in her life and had spent years telling herself she'd imagined. Her hands did not move on the wheel. Her breath did, once, short, and she covered it by shifting the car into drive too early and shifting it back. "The Rosewood," the handler said through the window. "He knows you're expected. Take the tunnel, not the bridge." Then the door shut and the man was hers to carry. She pulled into traffic. She kept her eyes on the road because the road was the only safe place to keep them. But the mirror sat there like a wound, and every red light she stopped at, the light climbed into the glass and lit the back seat, and she looked. She couldn't not look. He was on his phone the first 10 minutes, speaking low in Korean, then in English, then in Korean again, the two languages sliding into each other like he owned the seam between them. His voice was calm in a way that cost other people money. She didn't understand the Korean. She understood the English pieces. "The number holds. Tell them the number holds." And she understood the tone, which was the tone of a man who had never once in his adult life been told no and meant it. Seo Junho. She didn't know the name yet, not out loud, not on this seat, but she knew the neck. She knew that bird. The last time she'd seen it, it had been half finished. Raw, scabbed, the linework fresh, on a boy who wasn't yet 30 and swore he'd never let it heal wrong. She'd been younger too. There'd been a garage that wasn't hers, and a summer that ended badly, and a version of her that believed a boy who talked like the world owed him could still be saved by somebody who worked with her hands. She had put that version away in a box the same way she'd put her father away in a box, taped shut, shelved. And now it was in her back seat, finished, healed, wearing a suit that cost more than the compressor she was 19 days from losing. "How long to the Rosewood?" he asked. English. To her. She didn't turn around. 14 minutes with the tunnel. Her voice came out level and she was proud of the level. 20 if I take the surface streets to keep it smooth. Your call. A pause. She felt him look up. In the mirror, his eyes found the mirror, and for a half second they were looking at the same square of glass from opposite ends of the car, and she watched his face for the flinch of recognition, and did not see it. He saw a driver, a good one, a voice that knew the roads, nothing else. "Smooth," he said, and went back to his phone. Something in her chest let go and clenched at the same time. He didn't know her. Of course he didn't. She'd been a girl with grease under her nails and a cheap braid. She was a woman now, in a uniform designed to erase her. 10 years, a different city, a different life stacked on top of the old one, like coats of paint. She could drive him to the Rosewood and drive him back, and he would tip her like she was furniture, and she would go home and never say a word, and the box would stay taped shut. That was the plan for about 90 seconds. Then he shifted in the seat, reaching for something in his jacket, and his knee knocked the console, and he said a short word under his breath that she did understand. It wasn't polite, and he bent to pick up whatever had fallen into the footwell. And when he bent, his hand went under the front edge of the passenger seat, feeling for it, and stopped. "What is this?" he said, not to her, to himself. She watched in the mirror. His face had changed. The calm had a crack in it now, thin, but there. "Sir?" "Stop the car. There's no shoulder in the tunnel. 30 seconds and I can..." Then 30 seconds. He was still bent, his fingers working at something she couldn't see, and his voice had dropped the smoothness entirely. "Do not go into the Rosewood yet. Circle." She took the exit ramp out of the tunnel, up into the surface streets, and pulled into the mouth of a loading alley between two dark buildings where nobody would look twice at a black car idling. She put it in park. She turned in her seat, the first time she'd turned all the way around, and she saw what he'd pulled loose in his hand. A small black rectangle, matte plastic, no bigger than a book of matches, with a stub of wire and a patch of adhesive gone gray with dust. It sat in his palm, and he looked at it the way you look at a spider you find in your own bed. She knew what it was. Not from him. From herself, from 100 hours under dashboards, from the particular way a thing that doesn't belong to a car announces itself once you've touched 10,000 things that do. It was too clean to be factory. It was stuck, not bolted. It had a wire that went nowhere a wire should go. "That's not part of the car," she said. He looked up at her, and now, something moved behind his eyes, but it wasn't recognition, it was calculation, fast and cold, the sound of a man reordering the whole night in his head. "You know what it is." "I know it's not supposed to be there." She held out her gloved hand. He didn't give it to her. She lowered the hand. "May I?" He turned it over once more, then set it in her palm like he was handing her a live thing. She held it up to the reading light, turned it. There was no logo, no serial, nothing, which was itself the loudest thing about it. Legitimate hardware wants you to know its name. This wanted the dark. "It's a transmitter," she said. "Cheap body, but the guts aren't cheap. Somebody built this to sit under a seat and listen, and not be found on a walk-around. Whoever put it here knew the car would get inspected." She turned it again and found the seam. "It's still warm, it's live." She pressed a gloved thumbnail along the adhesive edge, testing how it had been set. Not slapped on in a hurry, squared to the seat rail, centered, the wire tucked flat so a hand sweeping under the cushion would slide right past it. "Whoever mounted this took their time," she said. "This wasn't done in a parking lot. This was done somewhere the car sat still for a while, with the light and the tools to do it clean." She looked up at him. "You know where this car lives between jobs?" He didn't answer that. She could see him not answering it, filing the question away with everything else. He said nothing for a long moment. In the quiet of the alley, she could hear her own pulse and the tick of the cooling engine and, faintly, his breath going slow and deliberate, a man forcing himself back to calm on purpose. "You were not supposed to be driving tonight," he said. "No, the regular man got sick." Marcus Bell. He said the name flatly, and she felt the floor tilt, because she hadn't told him the name, and there was no reason a fare should know his own driver's name, unless he'd read a file. "They told me, Bell, a background you could set a watch by, and instead I get..." He stopped. His eyes went over her uniform, her hands, the transmitter in her glove, and for the first time he was actually looking at her, not at the driver, at her. And she braced for it, the recognition, the 10 years collapsing. It didn't come. He was looking at her the way he'd look at any variable he hadn't accounted for. Instead, I get a driver who reads the underside of a seat like a page. I fix cars, she said. Real job. This is the other one. Which shop? Doesn't matter. It matters to me right now. His voice didn't rise. It got quieter, which was worse. In 4 hours, I am supposed to put my name on a document worth more than most countries' budgets. Someone put a live microphone in the car sent to carry me to the room where that happens. And the only person in this vehicle I did not choose is you. So, which shop? She held his eyes in the mirror light. She had spent the whole night being furniture, and furniture had kept her safe. And now the furniture was gone, and she was a woman he was measuring for a threat. Fine, she could be measured. She'd been measured her whole life by men who assumed she'd come up short. Boyd, she said, Boyd and daughter. On the east side, and I've been driving these corporate runs for exactly 2 weekends, and I got this one an hour ago, because a man I trust got poisoned, apparently, and if you think I planted that thing in a car I was assigned to 20 minutes before you got in it, then you're not as smart as your voice thinks you are. The silence after that had a different weight. He almost smiled. It didn't reach anywhere near warm. It was the flicker a chess player gives when the board does something interesting. No, he said. You didn't plant it. If you'd planted it, you would not have told me it was there. He leaned back. You'd have driven me to the Rosewood and let them hear everything. That's right. Which means somebody wanted me listened to tonight, and that somebody did not count on the driver they poisoned their way into replacing. He turned his head, the ink catching the light again, and looked out at the dark alley. How long have we been off the route? 6 minutes, the handler said circle. If someone's tracking this car, 6 minutes of nothing looks like traffic. 15 looks like a problem. He nodded slowly, filing it. You think in the right units. I think in cars. Same thing tonight. He held out his hand. Give it back. Do not turn it off. If it dies, they know we found it. Put it where it was. She hesitated. Everything in her wanted to crush the little black thing under her heel, but he was right, and she hated that he was right, and she pressed the transmitter back onto its patch of adhesive under the seat exactly where his fingers had found it. Warm, live, listening to nothing but the two of them breathing. They'll have heard you say, "This is not part of the car," she said quietly, once it was reseated. They heard stop the car. They heard a client with a nervous stomach and a driver taking an exit. His voice had gone smooth again, a performance now, pitched for the microphone. Louder, fine. Take the surface streets. My stomach's better. Rosewood, easy on the turns. Then, low, under it, meant only for her. Drive. Slow. I need to make one call the room downtown cannot hear, and I cannot make it in this car. She put it in drive. She rolled out of the alley the way a car rolls out of an alley when nothing is wrong, and her hands, which had held level through the whole thing, chose that exact moment to betray her, a fine tremor running through the left one on the wheel, and she gripped harder to kill it, and glanced at the mirror to see if he'd seen. He'd seen. He saw everything, that was becoming clear, but he said nothing about the hand. You have a name, he said instead. She almost gave him a false one. She had it ready on her tongue, the way you keep a spare fuse in your pocket, but something stopped her, some stubborn thing at the root of her that had never in her life been willing to be smaller than she was to make a man comfortable. Nefertari, she said, and that landed, not the neck, not the face, not 10 years of paint, the name. She watched it hit him in the mirror, watched his mouth open a 1/4 inch and close, watched the calm crack straight down the middle for one unguarded second before he sealed it over. He knew exactly one Nefertari. He had known her when the bird on his neck was still bleeding. Say that again, he said, and his voice was not smooth anymore at all. You heard it. She took the corner slow, easy on the turns, furniture again on the surface, everything under it on fire. Rosewood's 11 minutes. You've got a call to make. For a while, he didn't say anything. She could feel him staring at the back of her head, rebuilding her face from behind, laying the girl he'd known over the woman driving him, and she kept her eyes forward and let him do it. 10 years, she'd wondered, in weak hours, what she'd feel if she ever saw him again. She'd expected grief, or fury, or nothing. She hadn't expected this, a live microphone between them and 19 days on a clock he didn't know about, and her father's box taped shut on a shelf across town. "You drive for a car service," he said finally. "Quiet. Working it out. You, Boyd and daughter. That's your father's shop." Was. She didn't elaborate. The word did enough. Something crossed his face that she couldn't read, and didn't try to. "Nefertari," he said again, softer, like he was making sure the word was real and not a thing the night had invented. "You found a bug in my car. You found it. I told you what it was. You told me what it was in 4 seconds." He leaned forward, close to the seat back, low so the transmitter under the seat couldn't reach him. "Listen to me. In a moment, I am going to have you pull over, so I can make a call standing on a sidewalk in the rain, and everyone watching this car is going to think I am a fussy man who takes his important calls in private, which they already believe about me. When I get back in, you are going to drive me to the Rosewood, and you are going to drop me at the door, and you are going to take this car back to the depot, and you are going to say nothing to anyone about what is under that seat. Not your dispatcher, not your—" He stopped. "Not anyone. And then what?" "And then I find you again, tomorrow." He said it like a fact, not a hope. "Because someone put a listening device in the car sent for me on the night of the largest signature of my life, and the only person in this city I did not choose put it in my hand instead of into a wire. That is not a coincidence I walk away from. And you," his eyes held the mirror, and the 10 years were all the way present now, "you are not a coincidence I walk away from either." The rain started as he said it, a few drops and then the wall of it, the way summer storms come down all at once, and the wipers came on under her hand and swept the glass clear and dirty and clear again. Up ahead, a hotel awning glowed gold through the water. Not the Rosewood, somewhere anonymous, with a curb and an overhang and a doorman who'd hold an umbrella for a suit. "Here," he said. "Pull here. I'll be 4 minutes." She pulled to the curb. He was out before the car fully stopped, collar up, phone already at his ear, walking away from the vehicle and its hidden ear into the rain, becoming a dark shape against the gold light, the bird on his neck vanishing under the wet collar. Nefertari sat in the running car with her gloved hands on the wheel, and the transmitter alive under the seat behind her, and she looked at the thing she had not looked at all night, which was straight ahead, at nothing, at the wipers dividing the water. Her whole careful plan: drive him, take the tip, go home, keep the box shut, lay in pieces on the wet street. She reached into the chest pocket of the borrowed vest, an old habit, checking for a folded paper that wasn't there because it was in the other coat, at the shop, writing 11 days in a different pocket. Her fingers found only cloth. She let the hand fall. Through the windshield, through the rain, the dark shape that was Seo Junho stood under the awning and made his call, and every few seconds he turned his head and looked back at the black car at the curb, at her, checking that she was still there. She was still there. She had 19 days. She had a shop with her father's name on it, and a sister who didn't know how close the wolves already were. She had a 4th letter she hadn't shown anyone, and a box she hadn't opened, and a debt owned by a company that wouldn't say its own name. And now she had this, a man from a life she'd buried, back inside a car she'd been sent to drive by accident, holding the one thing that had turned this from a ride into a night that was going to change everything. He hung up. He stood a moment longer in the rain, looking at the car. Then he came back, fast, and folded himself into the back seat again, and the water rolled off his shoulders onto the leather, and he met her eyes in the mirror with the smoothness gone for good. "Rosewood," he said, "then the depot, then tomorrow." He held her gaze 1 beat past comfortable. "Do not lose that shop before I get to you, Nefertari. Whatever is coming for it. Do not lose it tonight." She put the car in drive. She had never told him about the shop being in danger. She had said, "was." 1 word, and he had built the rest, or he'd known it already, and she couldn't tell which was worse. The wipers swept. The gold awning slid away behind them. She drove him toward the Rosewood through the rain, furniture on the surface. Everything underneath it changed, and the little black thing under the seat listened to 2 people who had already stopped saying anything it could use. The Rosewood took its guests through a side portico where the rain could not reach them, and Nefertari brought the sedan to the curb under a canopy of brushed steel and waiting men. 2 of them stepped forward before the car had fully stopped. Junho lifted one finger off his knee and both stopped where they were. Not the lobby, he said. The mezzanine. The private room. She understood the instruction was for her. You're coming up. It was not a question, so she did not answer it. She put the car in park, killed the engine, and looked at him in the mirror. His face had gone smooth again, the smoothness of a man walking into a room full of cameras he could not see. There's a woman up there, he said, quieter. She signs before I do. She'll look at you. Let her. Why would she look at me? Because I brought you inside. He opened his own door before the men could reach it. And she notices everything I do that I've never done before. She should have said no. A driver waited with the car. A driver kept the engine warm, and her hands on the wheel, and her name off every list in the building. That was the entire shape of the job. But the little black thing under the passenger seat was still awake, still feeding two people somewhere the length of everything she and this man had said, and leaving it alone in an empty car felt worse than carrying it up a flight of stairs. She got out. She left the transmitter where it lived. The private room on the mezzanine had a long table and no windows worth the name, only a wall of frosted glass that turned the corridor's light into a soft gray blur. A woman stood at the head of the table in a jacket the color of a struck match, copper and satin, its collar rising on one side like a raised hand. Braids crowned her head in a pattern that had taken hours and showed none of them. She was not looking at the papers in front of her. She was looking at the door. Seiko, the woman said, you're late, and you brought staff. Vivian. Junho crossed to the table. The car had a mechanical concern. It's handled. Vivienne Vance let her eyes travel the length of Nefertari once. Slow, the way a person reads a receipt they intend to dispute. Handled by the driver. Yes. Interesting? She set two fingers on the closest page and slid it a half-inch, straightening a thing that was already straight. I like a man who trusts the help. Nefertari stood by the frosted wall and kept her gloved hands loose at her sides. She had been ignored in rooms like this her whole life, and she knew the temperature of it. This was not that. This woman had taken her measure and filed it, and the filing had a purpose Nefertari could not yet see. Han Dae-jin, the handler in gray, came in behind her and set a slim case on the table without a word. He clicked it open. Inside, on foam, sat a small object Nefertari didn't recognize and a folded document thick as a passport. Before we sign, Vivienne said, I want the key. Junho's hand, reaching for a chair, stopped. The key is with my counsel. Your counsel called me 20 minutes ago. Vivienne's voice stayed even, almost warm, and that was the frightening part. The encrypted key that authorizes the transfer isn't in his possession. He believed it was in the car. She lifted her eyes to Nefertari. Your car. The room reorganized itself around that sentence. Han Dae-jin shifted his weight toward the door, not fast, just enough to stand between it and the woman in the driver's uniform. Junho set both hands flat on the back of the chair. Say the rest of it, he told Vivienne. There's no rest, she smiled with her mouth only. A device that unlocks $5 billion travels in a car. The car has a driver nobody vetted, hired an hour before the run, standing in for a man who conveniently fell ill, and now the device is not where it should be. She spread her hands. I'm not accusing, I'm observing. There's a difference, and I've built a career on it. Nefertari felt the old heat climb the back of her neck, the one she'd learned to swallow in front of service managers and loan officers and men who called her sweetheart? Over a torque wrench. She swallowed it now. Heat was a thing that made your hands shake. She needed her hands. I don't have your key, she said. Of course you'd say that. I'd say it whether or not it was true, so it doesn't help you. She let that sit. But it's true, and there's a way to find out, and it isn't standing here reading my face. Vivienne's smile stayed fixed, but a muscle at the corner of it worked once. She was a woman who won rooms by making other people flinch, and the driver in the wine-white shirt had not flinched, and that was its own kind of information, and she was recording it. Junho had gone very quiet behind his chair. Nefertari could feel him choosing whether to speak for her or let her stand. He let her stand. She noted it the way she noted a bolt that held under load. I said it because it's true, and because I don't know what your key looks like. She kept her voice flat, the voice she used to tell a customer the transmission was gone. I know what my job looks like. I drove the car here. I never opened the trunk. I never touched the cabin, except the wheel, the mirror, and the seat. And yet, Vivian turned one hand palm up, presenting the empty air where the key was supposed to be. Junho started to speak. Nefertari got there first. Where does your counsel say he put it? Vivian blinked, the first honest reaction she'd shown. Excuse me? The key. When it was still where it should be. Where did he have it last? In a courier pouch. Given to Mr. Sio's people at the tower. Given to which people? Nefertari looked at Han Dae-jin. Him? The handler's jaw moved. Junho said, Dae-jin carried the pouch down. Then it was in the car before I ever sat in it. She was not defending herself now. She was reading the machine, the way she read a car by its sound, following the noise back to the part that made it. A pouch handed off in a lobby. Carried down. Put where? Han Dae-jin's eyes went to the seat case, then away. It was a small tell. She caught it because she had spent her life watching hands, and a man's eyes were only a slower kind of hand. You're doing his job for him, Vivian said, and there was something new under the words now, something that had stopped being amused. The driver reconstructs the courier chain. How lovely. Do you also read palms? I read where? Nefertari kept her eyes on the handler. A man carries a heavy case in his strong hand and a light pouch in his weak one. When his strong hand's full, he tucks the light thing wherever's closest and free. Closest and free in that car, from the curb, with the door already open, is the seat back pocket. She finally looked at Vivian. It's not magic. It's just paying attention to people who are used to not being watched. The line landed harder than she'd meant it to, because both of them heard the second thing inside it, and neither said so. The seat pocket, Nefertari said. You put the pouch in the seat back pocket behind the passenger. Because your hands were full with this. She nodded at the slim case he'd carried in. The room went quiet enough to hear the corridor light hum. I never checked the seat pockets, she said. A driver doesn't. But I know that car now. I did the walk around. I adjusted the passenger seat because the mirror threw a blind spot, and when I slid it forward, the back tilted, and things move when the back tilts. She was already walking through it in her head, the geometry of a courier pouch and a seat rail, and a bump over the tunnel expansion joint. If your pouch was loose in that pocket, it's on the floor now, under the mat most likely, front passenger side. You're describing the inside of my car very confidently, Junho said, for someone who never touched it. She met his eyes in the frosted light. I describe machines confidently. It's the only thing I do. For 1 second, something passed over his face that had nothing to do with Vivian or the key or $5 billion. Then it was gone. Dae-jin. He didn't look away from Nefertari. Go. The handler went. The door breathed shut behind him. Vivian lowered herself into her chair as if the standing had been a courtesy she was withdrawing. And if it's not there? Then I'm wrong, Nefertari said, and you can search me, my car, and my apartment, and you'll find grease and $40 and nothing that unlocks anything of yours. Bold. Accurate. She held the woman's gaze. I've spent 11 days being the only person who knows exactly how much trouble I'm in. I know what it costs to be wrong out loud. I'm not wrong about where a pouch goes when a seat tilts. Vivian studied her, and for the first time the warmth left her face entirely, and what stood underneath was cold and interested and patient, the face of a woman who had just learned that the furniture could talk. What did you say your name was? I didn't. No, Vivian agreed softly. You didn't. They waited. Junho pulled the chair out at last and did not sit in it, only stood behind it with his knuckles white on the wood. Nefertari watched his hands and understood that whatever the deal on the table was, it was not steady, and it had not been steady before she walked in, and the missing key was not the first thing to go wrong tonight, only the loudest. The door opened. Han Dae-jin came in with a courier pouch held flat on both palms, dust on one corner, a mat crease pressed across its middle. Front passenger, he said, under the mat. Nobody moved to take it from him. Vivian's eyes closed for a half-second, the length of a recalculation. When they opened, they were fixed on Nefertari, and the observation in them had sharpened into something with a blade on it. She had accused the help of theft. The help had found the thing, described its resting place before it was found, and made the accuser look like a woman who could not keep track of her own $5 billion. In a room built for signatures, the smallest person in it had just proven she was the only one who understood the objects the room was made of. "Well," Vivian said. She stood again, smooth, recovering the way expensive people recover, by pretending the fall was a step they meant to take. "The key is found. My apologies to your driver, Sezo." The apology landed on the table and stayed there, cold. "Have your girl bring the wine. We can still make the window." "I'm not your girl," Nefertari said, "and I don't serve the wine." "No." Vivian reached herself for the bottle sweating in its silver bucket at the sideboard, lifted it, and poured a glass full to the lip, unhurried, watching Nefertari the whole time. "You don't." She crossed the room. She did it without hurry, which was how Nefertari almost missed it. The wrist turning, the glass tipping, and then the wine was in the air, a dark red rope of it, and the cold of it hit Nefertari's collarbone and ran down under the white shirt she'd learned to knot a tie against 2 weekends ago. It soaked the collar. It ran into the seam of the black vest. It dripped off the leather at her wrist. She held still. Her hands stayed loose. She had promised herself her hands, and she kept the promise. "Now your staff," Vivian said pleasantly, setting the empty glass down. "Now you look like it. Perhaps next time your employer won't parade the mechanic through a room where adults are working." For one breath, nothing happened. Nefertari looked down at the red spreading through white and thought, absurdly, of the caliper cut on her finger, of blood she had ignored 2 nights ago because there was a car to finish. This was only wine. It would wash. The humiliation was the thing meant to stain, and humiliation only stained if you agreed to wear it. Then a weight came down over her shoulders. Junho had crossed the room without a sound, and he took off his own jacket, the dark one, the one that cost more than a month of the shop's lifts, and he set it over her wet shoulders, over the ruined shirt, and he did not look at Nefertari while he did it. He looked at Vivian. "The deal is dead," he said. Vivian laughed once, a bright disbelieving sound. "Over a driver. Over you." He drew the jacket's collar up at Nefertari's neck, a small, careful motion, and stepped in front of her, between her and the woman in copper. "You threw wine on someone in my care in a room where I do business. You accused her of theft to move me faster, because a signature that unlocks 5 billion moves faster when the other side is frightened. I've watched you do it to men. I told myself it was the price of you." His voice never rose. That was the terror of it, the same terror the room had carried since Nefertari walked in, now turned around and pointed the other way. "It is no longer the price of you. I'm not signing. You'll ruin yourself. Then I'll ruin myself sober." He picked up the thick folded document from the foam and set it back down, face down. "Hande Jean will see you out. Take your key. There's nothing here to unlock." Vivian did not move for a long moment. Her chest rose once, controlled. Then she gathered the courier pouch from the handler's hands herself, and the slim case, and she walked to the door with the exact measured grace she'd walked in with. And at the threshold she stopped, and she looked past Junho, at Nefertari, at the mechanic wearing a Mafia boss's jacket over wine-soaked white. "Whoever you are," she said, "you should have kept your mouth shut about the seat." Then she was gone, and the corridor light swallowed her copper into gray. The room let out its breath. Hande Jin stayed by the door, uncertain, a man whose orders had just evaporated. Junho stood with his back to Nefertari. His shoulders, she saw it only now, without the jacket on them, held so tight the seams of his black shirt pulled. "You just tore up $5 billion, she said. "Yes." "For wine." "No." He turned. Up close, without the jacket, the phoenix at the side of his neck showed above the collar, dark ink she had first seen when it was new and bleeding, and he was a boy who wasn't yet 30. She did not look at it. She had promised herself she wouldn't keep looking at it, the way you don't keep pressing a bruise. For the shape of the thing, she reached for the fastest way to make me weak, and she used you to do it, and I watched her do it, and I let it work for 1 second before I stopped it. His jaw moved. 1 second is how long it takes to become a man. I've spent 10 years refusing to be. She pulled his jacket tighter at her collarbone. It smelled of rain and cedar and something under that she made herself not name. "You should sit," he said. "Someone should look at, you're still wet." I've been wetter. She looked at the door Vivian had gone through, at the frosted wall, at Han Dae-jin standing useless by the light, and she made the decision she had been circling since the Bico de Carga, since he'd made her put the black thing back and drive away from it. Vivian was gone. The window Junho had killed was still open somewhere in a calendar. And the thing under the seat of the car downstairs was still listening to an empty cabin, faithful, live, reporting nothing, which meant that in a room somewhere, the people who'd planted it were realizing that the signature they'd meant to overhear had just not happened, and they didn't know why. There's something you need before she gets far, Nefertari said. Junho went still in the particular way he had, the way that took all the motion out of a body at once. You told me to keep it in the car. I told you not to kill it. She stepped past him toward the frosted wall, toward Han Dae-jin, toward the door. That's different. It's in the car, and it's still awake, and right now it's telling whoever's on the other end that a $5 billion signing just fell apart, and nobody said the word. Why? Out loud, she looked back at him. That's a gift. For maybe 15 minutes. 30 if they're slow. They're going to be confused before they're careful. Confused people check things. They call the person who planted it. They ask if it moved. And if we know it moved, then we know when they call, and who, and how fast. She had her hand on the door. You wanted to know where the car sleeps between runs. You wanted to know who had it long enough to build that thing and mount it clean. There's exactly one way to answer that, and it's not by turning the microphone off. It's by watching what they do in the next half hour while they still think it's working. Han Dae-jin looked at Junho. Junho looked at her, at the mechanic in his jacket who had walked into a room to be furniture and was now standing at the door telling him how to run a counter-surveillance on the people trying to bury him. You said you drive on weekends, he said. You said you fix cars. I do. This is not fixing cars. It's exactly fixing cars. The heat was gone from her voice now, replaced by the flat certainty she used over a torque wrench. You listen to the thing that's wrong. You don't rip it out and guess. You keep it running just long enough to hear where the noise comes from. Then you know what to replace. She pushed the door open on the gray corridor. Your car's been making a noise all night. You want to know who built it. We've got 15 minutes before they stop making it for us. Are you coming? Or do I go find your microphone by myself? For a moment he only looked at her, and the smoothness he wore for cameras was nowhere on his face, and what stood in its place was something she recognized from 10 years and a lifetime ago, a man deciding, against everything he'd trained into himself, to follow her lead. He picked up the face-down document, folded it into his inside pocket, and crossed the room to the door. Dae-jin. The car. Now. He stopped at Nefertari's shoulder, close, his voice dropping under the corridor hum. If you're right about the next 15 minutes. I'm right about the seat, she said. I'll be right about this. They went down the private stair together, the boss and the driver and the handler, out through the side portico where the rain had not stopped, to the black sedan waiting under the steel canopy with its small, faithful passenger still awake, beneath the floor mat's neighbor, still listening, still telling a story to people who had just discovered, somewhere across the city, that the story had gone wrong and did not yet know that the person who'd broken it was climbing back behind the wheel to hear them panic. Nefertari opened the driver's door. His jacket was still on her shoulders. She started to shrug out of it. Keep it, Junho said, getting in the back. You're wet, and it hides the collar. Nobody watching the car needs to know what happened upstairs. She kept it. She sat down behind the wheel, and under the passenger seat the black thing hummed its silent hum, and she reached, slowly, the way you reach into an engine that's still hot, and did not touch it, only laid her gloved fingers on the seat rail beside it, feeling for the warmth she already knew was there. It's still live, she said. Good. His voice came low from the dark behind her. Then let's give them something to hear. She started the engine and let it idle, and she did not pull away yet. Under the canopy the rain sheeted off the steel in a curtain that turned the portico lights to smear. She watched the mirror. A man in a doorman's coat stood near the valet stand with a phone against his ear, and he was not looking at the weather, and he had not moved to help another guest since she'd parked. She filed him the way she filed everything tonight, without deciding what he was yet. 2 rules, she said, keeping her voice conversational, ordinary. A driver making small talk for a microphone that was still awake. We don't say the name of the thing. We don't say the word. Found. As far as your car knows, the night went fine. The deal ran long, and you're tired and you want the depot. Understood. His answer came back at the same pitch. Easy. Performed. Then, under it, almost nothing. You've done this before. No. She checked the mirror again. The doorman had turned a quarter away, still talking. I've fixed 1,000 cars while the customer stood over me, lying about what they'd done to it. Same skill. You keep your hands moving on the part that's fine, so nobody watches the part that isn't. And which part are you working on now? The part where they think it still works. She eased the sedan off the curb, slow, unremarkable, a hired car carrying a tired man home. Right now, somewhere, a phone is ringing. Somebody just told somebody else that the signing died and they don't have a reason, because the reason left the room in a jacket that isn't hers, and the only microphone they've got has been sitting in an empty car hearing nothing but rain. She turned onto the wet avenue. They're going to make a call to be sure the ears are still on. When they do, this little thing wakes all the way up, and I'll feel it. Behind her, in the dark, Junho said nothing for a block. Then, feel it how? It draws more when it transmits, runs warmer. She flexed her gloved fingers once on the wheel. I had my hand on the rail. It's already warmer than it was upstairs. She let the sedan roll under a red that had just gone green, unhurried, giving the man behind the doorman's phone all the time in the world to be exactly as confused as she needed him. They're checking, right now, which means we've got our 15 minutes, and the clock started the second Vivian walked out that door. The wipers dragged the rain off the glass, and the city smeared and cleared, and under the passenger seat the little black thing ran a half-degree warmer than the story it was telling, and Nefertari drove into the next 15 minutes with a Mafia boss's jacket on her shoulders and her whole broken plan behind her, listening, the way her father had taught her, for the exact place where the noise was coming from. 14 minutes into the window, the little black thing under the passenger seat ran hot. Nefertari felt it before she saw anything. Her fingertips rested on the seat rail out of habit, and the metal there had gone from cool to warm the way an engine block warms after a hard pull. She kept both hands on the wheel and kept the sedan rolling at a crawl through a wet block behind the depot, past a shuttered laundromat, past a row of dark storefronts, and she said nothing worth hearing to the microphone. They're on it, she said low. Right now. Junho leaned forward from the back seat, one hand on the doorframe. Checking it works. Checking it works. She let the wheel drift them toward the curb, slow, like a driver with nowhere to be. Which means the deal dying scared them. A dead mic tells them nothing. A live one tells them everything they missed. He watched the rail where her fingers were. How long does it stay warm? Depends how long they listen. She kept her voice flat, a driver's voice, in case. Long enough. For a full minute, neither of them performed anything. The wipers dragged and released. Somewhere behind them a car turned onto the block, headlights swinging across the mirror, and Nefertari's eyes went to the glass and stayed there. The car passed. A delivery van. Nobody. Then the rail cooled. She felt it go, degree by degree, back toward the temperature of everything else in the car. Off, she said. They stopped. Satisfied. Or done copying. She pulled the sedan back into the lane. Either way, they heard a driver and a nervous man saying nothing. That's what they wanted to confirm. That the tool still points where they aimed it. Junho sat back. In the mirror, his jaw worked once, the muscle tightening under the phoenix, and he pulled a phone from his coat. Not the one he'd been performing on, a second one, thinner, older. He held it in his palm without unlocking it. Han, he said, not into the phone. To her, Han Dae-jin carried the pouch down. Han's had this car's schedule for 3 weeks. Han put the key under my mat. She turned them toward the wider avenue, where the lights were. That doesn't make Han the one who built the mic. No. His thumb moved over the dark screen. It makes Han a hand, somebody's hand. Whose? He didn't answer that. He unlocked the second phone. She got them off the surface streets and onto a service road that ran along the rail yard. 4 empty lanes. Sodium light, nobody. It was the kind of road where a car could sit and no one would wonder. She pulled onto the shoulder under a dead billboard and put it in park and left the engine running, heater low, and turned in the seat so she could see his face and not just the mirror. "If we're doing this," she said, "I need to know what we're actually doing, not the version for the box." He looked at the phone in his hand, then held it up so she could see the screen. A photograph of a document. He'd taken it himself, at some point, badly, the flash catching one corner. 3 subsidiaries own the courier company, he said, the one that services my cars. The middle one is called Halcyon Freight Holdings. Halcyon is Vivienne's, not her name on it, her mother's maiden name, 2 shells deep. Nefertari took the phone. She read it the way she read a repair order, top to bottom, then again for what was missing. This is ownership. This is a chain of who owns the company that owns the car service. Yes. It's not an order. She handed it back. You've got the company that touches the car. You've got Vivienne behind the company. You don't have anybody telling anybody to put a microphone in my seat. His hand closed around the phone. No. So it's a story. She said it plain. No cruelty in it. A good one. I'd believe it. But a good story with a hole in it is how people lose. My father used to say you can hear a bad wheel bearing from a block away and still lose the argument with the customer because you can't put the sound in his hand. She turned back to the windshield. You need the sound in your hand. Junho was quiet. Then, softly, in Korean, something short and bitter that she didn't need translated. Say it in English. I said I have been building the story for a year, he said, and tonight, a driver told me it's just a story. 2 weeks, she said. I've been a driver 2 weeks. Don't make me the wise one. I just know where the sound comes from. That landed. He looked at her differently for a second. Not the client look, not the boss look. Then he reached into the inside of his coat, past the folded $5 billion document he hadn't signed, and took out a flat leather case, the kind that holds a passport, and from it, a single folded sheet, soft at the creases from handling. Then here, he said, here is a sound. He didn't hand it to her at first. He unfolded it on his own knee. Under the dome light he reached up and clicked on, and she watched his hands, which were steady, and his face, which was not. When I bought into the district on the east side, he said, 6 years ago. The block your father's shop sits on. There were 4 buildings. I bought the paper on all 4, standard. You buy the debt, you hold the district, you develop when the leases turn. Nefertari went very still. I never touched 3 of them, he said. The 4th. He stopped. The 4th was a garage, Boyd and daughter. There was a note attached. From the man who ran it. Don't. A repayment record. He turned the sheet so the dome light hit it. Signed. Calvin Boyd. 6 years ago. He came to the holding office himself, they told me. An old man in a mechanic's coat, and he made an arrangement to pay it down slow, and he signed it, and every quarter for 2 years the payment came in on the day, to the dollar, until he died. Her voice had gone somewhere small. He died 6 years ago. He never told us there was a note. Imara does the books. There's no note in the books. Because it wasn't in your books, Junho said. It was in mine. He kept it off yours. I think he didn't want his daughters to carry a number they couldn't see the bottom of. She reached across and took the sheet before he offered it, and she held it under the light with both hands, and she read the signature. She knew that signature. She'd seen it on the back of photographs, on the deed frame in the office, on the last check he ever wrote, which Imara kept in a drawer uncashed. The C too big, the second B a loop he never closed. Her father's hand, the graphite worked so far into the calluses that even his signature looked a little dirty. This is real, she said. It came out like a question and an accusation at once. This is his. Yes. Then the debt. She was doing the math out loud now, fast, the way she'd solve a car. The debt that's about to take the shop. The Meridian debt. The one that changed hands. That's your paper. You've had it for 6 years. You're the... She stopped. Her hands tightened on the sheet. You're the one who's foreclosing on us. No. He said it fast, and for the first time all night his smoothness was completely gone, stripped to the bone. No, listen to me. 2 years ago, the payments stopped. From your side. and a servicer sent me a file that said the arrangement had collapsed, the borrower had gone silent, the account was distressed, and it recommended I transfer the paper to a recovery partner to handle. Meridian. I signed the transfer. I never read the shop's name. It was one of 400 files that quarter. The payments didn't stop. Her voice cracked down the middle. We never missed. Imara pays everything on the 10th. Ask the bank. The bank had us on the bank's schedule. Sandra, restructure, 3 letters. Which bank? She told him the name. Junho closed his eyes. When he opened them, the dome light made 2 hard points of them. That's not who held your paper. I held your paper. The bank you were paying was paying a servicer that reported to me, and 2 years ago that servicer told me the account died. He turned the phone over in his hand. Somebody made your account die on my desk while you kept paying on time on yours. She got out of the car. She didn't decide to. She was just suddenly standing on the wet shoulder with the door open and the rain coming down fine and cold, the dead billboard humming over her, the leather case still in her hand and her father's signature still in the other, and she pressed the heel of her hand hard against her mouth and breathed through it. Junho came around the front of the car. He stopped a body's width away, hands loose, giving her the distance. You want me to be the villain, he said. It would be simpler. I understand. 6 years. She dropped her hand from her mouth. You've owned us for 6 years, and you didn't know our name until I said, was, in the back of a car tonight. I owned a number, he said. Tonight I met the shop. The rain sat in her eyelashes. She looked at the folded sheet, at the payment record in his father's hand, and something turned over in her chest that wasn't relief and wasn't fury. It was worse than both. It was the specific vertigo of a floor you trusted turning out to be a picture of a floor. She reached into her own coat then. Not the driver's vest. The driver's vest had nothing in it. But she'd transferred one thing to this jacket before she'd left the shop. One thing she carried everywhere now, and her fingers found it folded small in the seam pocket. A screenshot she'd printed at the shop's ancient printer 11 days ago, the day the 4th letter came, because she didn't trust a phone to keep it. Then I'll show you a sound, she said, and held it out. He took it. He unfolded it under the billboard light. That's the message the shop got, she said. Not a letter, a message. To the shop's business line, 2 years ago. Imara showed it to me once, and I never forgot it, and 11 days ago, I found the log and printed it. It says the restructure was approved. It says stop the direct payments. The account is moving to a new servicer. Do not pay the old line. A new coupon book will follow. Her voice was steady now, driver flat, because it had to be. We stopped paying the old line because a message told us to, and the new coupon book never came. And 8 months of silence later, the first bank letter showed up saying we were behind. Junho read it twice. His thumb pressed the paper flat against his own palm. You stopped paying, he said slowly, because a message told you the account was moving. Yes. And on my side, a servicer told me the account had gone silent and recommended I move it. Yes. The same month. The same month, she watched him get there. Somebody told you we quit. Somebody told us to quit. And the only thing that had to be true for both to work was that your desk and our shop never, ever talked directly, which they didn't, because you owned a number, and we owed a bank, and there were 3 shells in between. He looked up from the paper. Behind him the sedan idled, exhaust ghosting red in the tail light, the rain falling through it. This wasn't a debt going bad, he said. No. This was built. His voice had dropped to almost nothing. Somebody stood in the gap between us and fed each side the lie that fit. To me, they defaulted, cut them loose. To you, it's handled, stop paying. And then just waited for the number to rot enough to take the building. Somebody who could reach your servicer, Nefertari said, and reach our business line. They stood in it. The rain, the hum, the red exhaust. Halcyon, he said. Your Halcyon paper touches your car service, she said. Does it touch your loan servicing? The muscle in his jaw went tight again. The recovery partner I transferred your paper to, Meridian. He said it like a man reading his own handwriting and not recognizing it. Meridian's parent restructured last year, new ownership. I signed off on the vendor because the terms were clean. He looked at the phone. I never checked who bought them. You want to bet me, Nefertari said. on whose maiden name is 2 shells down. He didn't take the bet. He walked back and got into the front passenger seat this time, not the back, and she noticed it and said nothing about it and got in behind the wheel. The heater pushed warm air across both of them. The 2 printed sheets lay on the console between them, his father's, her father's, signature, and the message that told a shop to stop paying, side by side, and for a moment, they both just looked at the pair of them, like 2 halves of a broken casting, finally set edge to edge. 10 years ago, she said, before she'd decided to, you didn't do this to me 10 years ago either. I want to say it once so I stop carrying it wrong. He went still. I spent a long time telling the story where you walked away, she said, eyes on the rain. Where you had a chance to stay and you took the money instead. And maybe that's still true, but I'm sitting here watching you find out you've been foreclosing on my family for 2 years, without knowing our name, and I'm thinking maybe I've been believing a version somebody handed me then too. She shook her head once. I don't know. I'm not ready to hand you that. I'm just saying, I've believed a Fed story before and it fit too clean. It did fit clean, he said. Quiet. Both of them. That's how you know a hand made it. Real things don't fit clean. My father used to say the same thing about a diagnosis. She almost smiled and didn't. If every symptom points at one part, it's a coincidence or it's a lie. Real cars break in ugly spread out ways. This broke too neat. This broke like a diagram. He was quiet a moment. My mother used to say the same about people, he said, that the ones who never make a mistake in front of you are the ones running a script. She'd know. She ran a few. He turned the message over in his hands, reading the back, which was blank, as if the blank side might say something. I stopped listening to her when I was young. Cost me a decade. You're listening now. I'm listening to a driver, he said, which she'd find funny. He picked up the message printout and read it a 3rd time, and this time his hand wasn't steady, and she watched a thing happen in his face that she'd only see once more that whole night. The slow arrival of a specific shame, the kind that comes when a careful man understands that his carefulness was the tool. I moved your paper to Meridian with my own signature, he said. I'm the reason the recovery partner has standing. Whatever's coming for your shop, it's coming through a door I signed open 2 years ago, because a file told me to, and I trusted the file. You didn't know. That's the whole trick. He set the paper down. You build it so the careful people do the damage for you, and feel responsible when it lands. She didn't foreclose on you. I did. She just made sure I'd never look up in time to see whose roof it was. Nefertari looked at the 2 sheets. 19 days, she thought, and then made herself say the real number out loud, because he needed the clock. There's a date on the recovery letter, she said. Possession proceedings. We've got... She counted it, the way she'd counted it every night. We've got the clock running, and it doesn't care that we just figured this out. Knowing who built it doesn't stop it. A diagnosis isn't a repair. No, he put the second phone away and took out the first one, the performing one, and turned it face down on his own knee. But you don't repair a car by arguing with the noise. You go to the part. The part's a person. The part, he said, is a woman who threw wine on you tonight to make you look like a thief so a signing would move faster, and who's been standing in a gap between my desk and your family's mailbox for 2 years, feeding both of us the exact lie that fit. He looked at her. I canceled $5 billion in that room, and I told myself it was because she made my weakness work for a second. That was true, but it wasn't the reason it felt like the floor moved. He paused. It felt like the floor moved because some part of me had already read your father's name on a payment record 6 years ago and buried it under 399 other files, and tonight a driver said was, and it dug itself back up. The heater ticked. Outside, a train finally came along the yard, slow, endless, its lights strobing across both their faces, and neither of them moved to drive until it passed. I need to see it, Nefertari said when the train was gone. The Meridian ownership, not your story about it. The paper. Because if it's her name 2 shells down, then the debt taking my shop and the microphone under my seat and the wine on my collar are all one thing, and I've spent 2 years thinking my family was just unlucky. Her hands closed on the wheel. And I need to know we were hunted. It's uglier, but I can fix hunted. I can't fix unlucky. She heard how much of her father was in it. He'd told her a version of that once, over a transmission that wouldn't behave, when she was 12 and ready to cry over the thing. Bad luck happens to you, he'd said, wiping his hands. A bad design is a thing somebody did. You can find the man who did a thing. She'd thought it was about gears. It had never once been about gears. He'd have named the person in the gap before the coffee got cold, she said. My father. He kept a note off his own daughter's books to shield them, Junho said. He found gaps for a living. He just kept a few to himself. He held her eyes. So do you. That one she let stand, because it was true, and there was no wiping it off. Tomorrow I can pull it, he said. Morning. There's an office. Then tomorrow. Tomorrow. He looked at the 2 sheets on the console and, carefully, without asking, matched their edges and folded them together, once, and held them out to her, both of them, his father's record and her family's message, in one fold. These stay with you. You're the one who can put the sound in a hand. She took the fold. She put it in the seam pocket, the one with no zipper, over the place where for 11 days she'd carried the other letter, the one to Imara she still hadn't sent, and the 2 folded papers sat against each other there, the goodbye she'd written and the proof she hadn't known she needed, and she pressed her hand flat over the pocket for a second, like you'd press a wound. There's a woman I work with, she said, my sister, Imara. She still thinks it's a bank. She thinks it's just a hard month that's been going for 2 years. Her jaw tightened. She's going to find out her father signed a note behind her back to protect her, and that the shop's been owned by a Korean man she's never met, and that I've been intercepting the mail for 11 days so she wouldn't see the 4th letter, and that I've been driving Mafia signings on the weekend to keep the lights on. She let out a breath. That's a lot of ugly to hand somebody who does the books. Then hand it in the right order, he said. Proof first. People believe the sound before they forgive the driver. She looked at him. Is that your father talking, or yours? Mine, he said. I've handed a lot of ugly in the wrong order. She put the car in gear. She pulled off the shoulder and back onto the service road, and the rain had thinned to almost nothing, and the depot was 8 minutes out, and she drove it slow, because they'd stopped saying anything to the microphone entirely, and there was no longer any reason to hurry the night to its end. Depot, she said. Then you go wherever you go, then morning. Then morning. He watched the wet road come at them. One thing. What? When you pull the mic, he said, you leave it in the seat. It's off. It's done its job. They confirmed it works. She glanced at him. Why leave a live thing under me? Because now we know what it is, he said. It's not a leak anymore. It's a leash we're holding the other end of. The day comes we want them to hear something. He looked at her. We'll want it warm. She thought about that. The billboard, the train, the 2 folded papers against her hip, a tool that pointed where somebody aimed it, turned, quietly, to point back. My father would have liked you, she said, and was surprised to find she half meant it. He never trusted anybody who fixed things by ripping them out. He said you leave the wire and learn what it carries. Leave the wire, Junho said. I'll remember that one. The depot gate came up ahead. Chain link. 1 light. She slowed for it. Nefertari. He said her whole name, the way he had in the back of the car hours ago, and it still did something to the air. Whatever she built, it took 2 years, and it needed both of us blind. It's already breaking tonight, in this car, because 2 blind people happened to be in the same seat. He paused. Don't lose the shop before I get you the paper. Whatever's coming for it this week. Hold the shop. He'd said a version of that the night before, on a rainy curb, before either of them had a signature to hold. This time she understood exactly why he'd known. 19 days, she said. It's fewer now. How many? She told him. He looked out at the gate, and the single light, and the rain going to mist, and when he spoke, it wasn't smooth, and it wasn't a boss, and it wasn't a client. Then we don't waste tomorrow, he said. She stopped the car at the gate. The little black thing under the passenger seat sat cold and patient, and hers now, a wire she'd chosen to leave. And in the seam pocket over her hip, 2 folded papers pressed together, a message that had told a shop to stop paying, and a record in her father's hand that proved he'd been fighting for them in a room none of them ever knew existed, and for the first time since the 4th letter came, Nefertari understood that she wasn't behind on a debt. She was inside a design, and you could always find where a design broke. The office had a plaque by the door and a receptionist who didn't look up. Nefertari read the plaque twice. Meridian shared a floor with 3 other names she'd never heard of, all of them thin, all of them clean, the kind of names lawyers keep in a drawer. Junho gave the receptionist a card. The card did more than her face would have. A minute later, a man in shirt sleeves came out holding a folder like it might bite him. "There's nothing to see," the man said. "The account is in a fixed status." "I've heard that sentence," Nefertari said. "Twice. On the phone. Word for word." The man's eyes went to Junho, then back to her, and settled on neither. He'd been told what to say and not what to do if the person in front of him already knew the trick. Junho set 2 fingers on the counter. Ownership records, the parent. Who restructured it, and when? "I'm not authorized." "You're authorized to hand me a printout of a public filing," Junho said, "or you're authorized to explain to a judge why you wouldn't." The man went back through the door. He was gone 4 minutes. He came back with 3 pages, warm from the machine, and he laid them on the counter face down like that changed anything. Nefertari turned them over. She read the chain the way she read a torn belt, from the damage backward. Meridian Recovery Partners, held by a holding company, held by a second holding company, and at the bottom, the name that owned the top. She didn't say it out loud. She put her thumb over it and slid the page to Junho. He looked at it for a long time. His jaw did the thing she'd seen in the car, the small tightening near the phoenix, the muscle that moved when the rest of him refused to. "Halcyon's sister," he said. "Same mother's maiden name. 2 shells over." "Vivienne," Nefertari said. She said it flat so it wouldn't shake. "She owns the paper on my father's shop. She has for a year. And she didn't know it was ours until Saturday night, when I said one word in a hotel room." "Was," Junho said. "Was." The receptionist was watching them now. So was the man in shirt sleeves, from the doorway, the folder still against his chest. Nefertari folded the 3 pages once and put them in the seam pocket, on top of the record her father had signed, on top of the letter she hadn't sent. The pocket was getting full of proof. None of it had fixed a single thing. They took the elevator down without talking. In the lobby, Junho stopped at the glass and looked out at the street like he was reading it for exits. "She'll move today," he said. "You sound sure." "She lost $5 billion Saturday because a driver read a seat." He turned. "She doesn't lose quietly. She finds the smallest thing you love and she buys it. And she makes you watch her decide what to do with it. The shop isn't small. To her it's a receipt," he said. "To you it's the whole world. That's the arithmetic she likes." Nefertari's phone buzzed against her hip. She'd had it on silent since the depot. She looked at the screen, and the world tilted a half inch. Imara. 4 missed calls. A text under them. "Call me. 2 men here from the county. They have a paper. What is this?" She was moving before she finished reading. Junho matched her at the door. The drive to the east side took 11 minutes on a Sunday. She did it in 9. She didn't remember most of it. She remembered the light on Halsted going yellow and going through it anyway, and Junho in the passenger seat saying nothing, one hand flat on the dash, letting her drive. The shop's front bay was open. 2 cars sat in the lot that didn't belong to any customer. A county sedan and a black SUV with tinted glass parked crooked across 2 spaces, the way a car parks when the driver wants you to know he didn't care where. Imara stood in the office doorway in her work jacket, the one with the shop's name stitched over the pocket, and she had a paper in her hand and a look on her face that Nefertari had seen exactly once before, at the funeral, when the pastor said Calvin's full name and the middle name was wrong, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. "Nef," Imara said, "what did you do?" "Not." "What happened?" "Various." "What did you do?" Nefertari felt that land in her chest and stay. "Let me see the paper," she said. Imara handed it over. It was a notice of acquisition and intent. Meridian Recovery Partners had assigned the note to a new holder, Cordwell Asset Group, effective immediately, and Cordwell was exercising acceleration. The full balance was due, not in 19 days. The 19 days were gone. There was a new number on the page, bolded, and it was 7. 7 days to pay in full or surrender the property, the equipment, the lifts, the compressor, the sign. Nefertari read the holder's name again. Cordwell Asset Group. She didn't know it. She didn't have to. She knew whose hand had signed the assignment on a Sunday, faster than a Sunday should allow. Who's Cordwell? Imara said. A drawer, Nefertari said. That's not an answer. It's the only true one I have right now. The office door behind Imara opened wider, and a woman came out. Not Vivienne. A woman in a pale suit with a civic pin on the lapel, 40-something, red-brown hair to the shoulders, the kind of face a city puts on its mailers. She had a tablet in the crook of her arm and a smile she'd clearly practiced in a mirror until it stopped meaning anything. You must be the sister, the woman said to Nefertari. The mechanic. I'm Rebecca Sloan, Licensing and Community Standards. I know who runs Community Standards, Nefertari said. She didn't, but she knew the shape of what walks in a pale suit on a Sunday next to a repossession. Then you'll understand I'm not the bad news, Sloan said. I'm just the part that has to be on paper. She turned the tablet so the screen faced out. Your operating license, your compressed air certification, and your after-hours service permit are under administrative review as of this morning. A complaint was filed. Multiple complaints, actually. Environmental, safety, zoning. Until the review clears, you can't take in work. We took in work last night. You can finish what's on the lifts, Sloan said. You can't start anything new, and you can't collect on new invoices while the license is suspended. The smile again. It's temporary. These things usually resolve in, she tilted her head, 60, 90 days. 7 days to pay, 90 days before she could legally earn $1 to pay it with. Nefertari did the arithmetic Junho had named in the lobby, and it came out exactly the way it was built to. Who filed the complaints? She said. That's confidential during review. Filed this morning, on a Sunday. Multiple agencies at once. Nefertari kept her hands loose at her sides, the way she had in the hotel with the wine coming. You know how that reads to me. Sloane's smile didn't move, but something behind it did. I read paper, Miss Boyd, not intentions. Funny, Nefertari said. So do I. She stepped closer to the tablet, close enough to see the top of the review form. 3 agency logos across the header. 1 filing timestamp on all 3. 6:14 a.m. The same minute, to the second, on complaints that were supposed to come from 3 separate offices that didn't share a building or a database. They all filed at 6:14, Nefertari said. Same minute. 3 agencies. Sloan turned the tablet away, casual, a beat too fast. Systems sync. Not those systems. I've sat in the county waiting room. Air permit and zoning don't talk to each other. They can't. Somebody filed all 3 from one desk and stamped them to look separate. She held Sloane's eyes. You know that. You brought the tablet with the header still showing. For half a second, Sloane's public face flickered, and underneath it was something that might have been a person who'd been asked to do this and hadn't liked it. Then the smile came back and sealed over it. You'll get the schedule by email, Sloane said. The SUV door opened then, and Vivienne got out. She'd changed her clothes since the hotel. The copper jacket was gone. This one was black, high-collared, and she wore it like armor that had never once been dented. She crossed the lot without hurrying, heels finding the cracks in the concrete Nefertari had patched herself 2 summers ago, and she stopped in the middle of the yard where everyone could see her, because being seen was the point. Boyd and daughter, Vivienne read off the sign, slow, tasting it. Automotive. I looked it up last night, after you were so helpful about the seat. She looked at Imara, then at Nefertari, then at the open bay behind them like she was pricing it. It's smaller than I pictured. Your whole life. It fits in a lot. You don't have anything to do here, Imara said. Her voice was steady, but her hand had found the doorframe. I own the note on this building, Vivienne said, pleasant. I have everything to do here. I'm the landlord of your last 6 years. Nefertari stepped forward. 1 step, put herself between Vivienne and her sister without deciding to. You bought it Saturday, after the hotel. This, she nodded at Sloane, at the notice in Imara's hand. This is you being angry that you got read in a room. This is me collecting a debt that was legally in default, Vivienne said. Your father stopped paying 2 years ago. That's not a story I invented, sweetheart. That's a ledger. She smiled. I do love a clean ledger. The word, ledger, did something to Nefertari's spine. She'd heard Junho say it in the car, the same fondness. She filed it and said nothing, because saying it would be showing a card, and she was learning, slowly, expensively, to hold cards now. My father paid every month until he died, Nefertari said. In person, to an office. Somebody made it look like he stopped. Prove it, Vivian said. Light, almost bored. You have 7 days and no license. Prove whatever you like. That was when Junho came around the front of the car. He'd stayed by the sedan through the whole thing, hands in his coat, and Nefertari had half forgotten he was there, which was its own kind of tell about how far into the fire she'd walked. Vivian saw him and her whole body changed. Not fear, appetite. The look of someone who'd been waiting for the second guest to arrive so the party could really start. There he is, Vivian said. The man who tore up $5 billion over a splash of wine. She turned to Sloane, conversational. You should have seen it, Rebecca. He put his own jacket on the help. It was very cinematic. Don't, Junho said. Don't what? Tell them? Vivian's voice stayed sweet and went somewhere colder underneath. They should know what they cost him. You cost him, girl. He walked out of the biggest signature of his life because you couldn't keep your mouth shut about a seat, and now he's standing in a grease lot on a Sunday like it's romantic. She laughed once, short. It isn't romantic. It's a liability, and I'm going to make it expensive for both of you. She reached into her jacket and took out a folded document, thick, the kind Nefertari had seen come out of a briefcase 2 nights ago. She held it out toward Junho. You've been served, Vivian said. As of this morning. Breach of the Memorandum of Understanding, tortious interference and defamation. You called me a thief in front of witnesses and killed a deal I'd spent a year building. $5 billion in damages. I'm not asking for the deal back, Junho. I'm asking for what it was worth. From you. Junho didn't take the paper. Han Dae-jin appeared from the far side of the SUV. Nefertari hadn't seen him get out, and it was Han who took it, folded it once and put it in his coat, his face giving nothing. So even that was theater. Vivian had brought Junho's own man to accept the service, or Han had come on his own, and Nefertari couldn't tell which, and the not being able to tell was a cold little stone in her stomach. You built the deal to be bugged, Junho said quietly. You built the default to be found 2 years late. You've been building this for longer than a weekend. I build things, Vivian agreed. It's what I'm good at. You buy things and forget you own them. She let that sit. 6 years you held the paper on this block, and never once read the name on the 4th door. I read every name, Junho. That's the difference between us. That's why you'll lose. Imara made a sound then, small, and Nefertari turned in time to see her sister's face doing the math a full beat behind, the way you do when a stranger says a true thing about your own family that you didn't know. 6 years, Imara said. To Junho. You held our paper for 6 years? Imara. Nefertari started. No. Imara's hand came off the doorframe. She looked at Nefertari, and the betrayal in it was worse than anything Vivian had brought. You knew him, she said it. You knew him. That night driver, the run, She stopped. How long have you been driving cars for these people, Nef? How long has there been a 4th letter you didn't show me? The yard went quiet. Even Vivian went quiet, because she'd found the fault line without trying, and she had the sense to let it crack on its own. 11 days, Nefertari said, because there was no version of this that wasn't the truth now, and the truth in the wrong order was still all she had. The 4th letter came 11 days ago. It said Meridian. I didn't tell you because I thought I could fix it before it touched you. I've been intercepting the mail. I got to the box before Robert every day, and 2 weekends ago I started driving nights for the money, and I picked up a run, and the man in the back seat was me, Junho said. Imara looked at him, then at her sister, then at the paper in her own hand with the number 7 bolded on it. And Nefertari watched 6 years of trust. You take the cars, I take the books. We tell each other everything. Watched it come apart in her sister's face in real time, in the open lot, with an audience. You lied to me every morning for 11 days, Imara said. You texted me, Almost done, go home. And you were opening our mail so I wouldn't see it. To protect you. From my own shop, Imara's voice cracked on. It's my shop too, Nef. It's my name on the sign. Daughter. Both of us. You don't get to decide alone which one of us gets to bleed. It was the exact accusation Nefertari would throw at Junho 2 nights from now, though she didn't know that yet. In the moment, it just went into her like a blade she'd forged herself. Vivian watched it all with the pleasure of a woman who'd bought a ticket. Well, she said, I'll let you 3 sort out the family portion. She started back toward the SUV, then paused and looked at Nefertari over her shoulder, and dropped the pleasant voice entirely. You embarrassed me in front of a man I was going to take for everything, Vivian said, in front of the boss, over a seat. So I'm going to take the thing your dead father built and I'm going to have it demolished, and I'm going to put a parking structure on it, and every time you drive past, you're going to know that you did that. You had a mop in your hand and you decided to have opinions. She smiled, and it reached her eyes this time, which was worse. Keep the jacket, it's the most expensive thing you'll ever own. She got in the SUV. Hyundai Jin got in the other side. Sloane tucked her tablet under her arm, laid a business card on the workbench inside the bay door. Nefertari saw her do it, saw the little Civic pin catch the light, and walked to the county sedan without another word, in a hurry that looked, for the first time, like a woman who wanted to be somewhere she wasn't. The lot emptied. The 2 cars pulled out one after the other and turned the corner and were gone, and the only sound left was the compressor Nefertari had forgotten to shut off, cycling on, cycling off, a machine that in 7 days would belong to a woman who'd never touch it. Nobody moved for a moment. Then Imara went back inside the office and Nefertari heard the drawer. The drawer, the one with the box marked DAD taped shut. She heard it open and she went cold. But Imara wasn't after the box. She was after the ledger. The real one, the physical one, the green book Calvin had kept before there were computers and that Imara still updated by hand because she liked the weight of it. Nefertari found her at the counter with it open. Show me where he stopped paying, Imara said. 2 years ago, she said there's a ledger. Show me ours. Imara, show me. Nefertari came around the counter. She turned the green book back 2 years, to the month the message had come, the fake one, the restructure approved, stop paying the old line. And there in her father's, no, not her father's, he'd been dead 4 years by then, in Imara's hand, careful, columned, the payments to the bank line, on the 10th of every month, and then a note, in the margin, in Imara's writing. Bank says restructure approved, new coupon book coming, told to pause, IB. Nefertari stared at it, the margin note, in her sister's hand. You got the message, Nefertari said slowly. 2 years ago, you got it, not me. You were told to stop paying. Imara looked at her own handwriting like it belonged to a stranger. A woman called. She had all our numbers, our account, everything. She was so normal. She said the restructure went through, that continuing to pay the old line would double charge us, that the new book would come in 6 weeks. Her hand went to her mouth. It never came. And then, 8 months later, the first bank letter, and I thought it was a mistake. I thought I could clear it up. I didn't want to worry you. You had the cars, you had... She stopped. The 2 sisters looked at each other across the green book, and the whole architecture of the last 2 years rearranged itself in the silence. Nefertari had been protecting Imara from a 4th letter. Imara had been protecting Nefertari from the first one. They'd each been carrying half the same weight in the dark, on opposite sides of a wall, and the person who built the wall had a parking structure planned for where they were standing. We did the same thing, Imara said. Her voice had gone very small. We both decided alone. Yeah, Nefertari said. Imara closed the green book and pressed her palm flat on the cover, the way Calvin used to, before he shut the shop for the night. I was so scared of you finding out I paused the payments, she said, that I broke it. That if I'd just kept paying the old line like normal, none of this. She shook her head. 2 years I've been sitting on that, and you were sitting on 11 days. We're a mess, Nef. We're our father's daughters and we still couldn't just say the thing out loud. He kept a note off the books too, Nefertari said. To protect us, same reflex. It's in the family like a bad knee. Imara almost laughed. It came out wet. That woman knew we'd do it. She didn't even have to try hard. That's how she does it, isn't it? She counts on us doing that. Yeah. Nefertari sat down on the stool behind the counter, the one with the tape on the seat, and for the first time since the caliper cut her finger 3 nights ago, she felt the whole thing settle onto her at once. The 7 days, the frozen license, the lawsuit on the man in her passenger seat, the sister who'd carried a lie to match her own, the box in the drawer she still hadn't opened, the parking structure. She put her head down for exactly 1 breath. Then she lifted it. Because Deacon had said it, weeks ago, over tacos. Let me be the second person. And Calvin had said it, longer ago, with grease in his knuckles. You don't fix a car by naming everything wrong with it, you fix the one thing that lets the rest go. She left a card, Nefertari said. Imara wiped her face. What? Sloane. She left a card on the bench. On purpose. People who leave cards want to be called. Nefertari stood. And Vivienne told me something she didn't mean to. Twice. She used the same word he uses. Ledger. She loves a clean ledger. She was moving now, around the counter, toward the bay. You don't get a ledger that clean by accident. Somebody keeps it. Somebody has the real one. The one where she told him you defaulted and told you to stop paying, in the same month, from the same desk. That's not 2 lies. That's 1 document, kept somewhere, because a woman that careful keeps a copy of her own work. Neff, we have 7 days and no license, and she's about to sue him into the ground. I know. Nefertari picked up Sloane's card off the bench, turned it over, put it in the seam pocket with everything else. But I've spent 3 days being driven around inside somebody's design, and I keep noticing the same thing my father taught me. She looked at her sister. A design that clean has to be maintained, which means there's a door somebody keeps oiling, and a door that gets used is a door you can find, Imara finished. She'd grown up on the same sentences. Outside, the light was going long across the lot. Junho stood by the sedan where he'd been the whole time, holding the copy of the lawsuit Han hadn't taken. No, Han had taken it. This was a second copy, folded, that he'd pulled from his own coat, and he was reading it the way Nefertari read a torn belt, from the damage back. He looked up and met her eyes through the open bay door. 5 billion in damages on him, 7 days on her, a frozen license, a bought debt, a sister who'd just learned how long the lying had gone both ways, and a woman driving away in a black car who'd promised to pour concrete over the only thing Calvin Boyd left standing. Nefertari walked out into the lot with Sloane's card in her pocket, and did not feel 1 inch less afraid. She just picked the one thing to pull. Junho, she said, the message that told my sister to stop paying, the message that told you she defaulted. Same month, same hand. She stopped in front of him. Where does a woman that careful keep the copy she can't throw away? Junho set the copy of the lawsuit down on the workbench and looked at the drawer she hadn't opened. Somewhere she keeps it close, he said. People who forge a thing don't trust anyone else to hold it. Nefertari wasn't thinking about Vivienne's copy anymore. She was thinking about her own. The rain had come back hard over the east side, drumming the flat roof, sheeting off the bay door they'd rolled halfway down. Imara stood at the counter with the green book still open under the lamp, and in the drawer, taped shut for 6 years, the box marked DAD sat where Calvin had left it. She crossed to the drawer and put her hand on the pull. Neff, Imara said. Softer now. That's Dad's. I know whose it is. She'd carried it closed for 6 years the way she carried the letter in her seam pocket, because opening a thing means you can't put it back the way it was. Her thumb found the tape. Old tape, brittle, going amber at the edges. It gave without a fight. Inside, the reading glasses, one arm bent. The watch, stopped at a time that meant nothing now. The coverall, folded. The grease gone stiff in the creases, a rubber band around a stack of letters. And under the letters, a flat plastic case with a cassette in it, and beside the cassette a small digital recorder, the kind couriers used to carry, the kind Calvin would have bought used because new was for people who didn't count. Deacon's headlights swung across the wall. He came in under the bay door shaking water off his jacket, saw the 3 of them around the drawer, and stopped where he stood. He didn't ask. He'd offered, once, to be the second person. He waited to see if she'd finally let him. Nefertari lifted the letters out first. Not bank letters. Not Meridian. These were addressed in Calvin's hand to a name at an office downtown, and clipped to each one a receipt. Payment received, a date, an amount. 2 years of them, month after month, everyone on time, everyone kept out of the shop's books so his daughters would never carry the weight in their heads. He paid, Imara said. She'd come around the counter without deciding to. He paid every month, and he never told us there was anything to pay. He told the man downtown, Nefertari said. He didn't tell us because telling us was the debt he wouldn't pass on. Junho stood very still by the workbench. The office downtown was his. The receipts had his firm's stamp in the corner, 6 years faded. He'd held the paper on this block, and Calvin Boyd had walked into his office and shaken a hand nobody thought to remember the name attached to. Nefertari set the letters down. She picked up the recorder. There was a second box under it, she saw now. Smaller. A note folded on top in the same hand that signed the receipts. She read it once and her jaw set. He left instructions, she said. For what? Imara said. For if it ever came back. Nefertari held up the note so her sister could see the block letters. If they ever say you didn't pay, play this. He copied a call. The rest was practical. A man explaining a machine to daughters he trusted to be smarter than the machine. Calvin had recorded a phone line. Calvin, who kept a note off the books to protect them, had also kept proof, because a careful man plants 2 seeds and only tells you about one. Her thumb found the button. Static first, then a woman's voice, thinned by a bad line, 6 years old and unmistakable. So you'll want to stop the automatic payments on the old account, Mr. Boyd. The restructure's approved. New coupon book ships in 6 weeks. You keep paying the old line and the system double bills you, and untangling that is a nightmare, believe me. Calvin's voice, low, careful. And the new book comes to the shop. To the shop, 6 weeks. Give me the name again, the one I ask for if it doesn't come. A pause. The kind of pause a liar takes to decide how much rope. It'll come, but you can always reach me. It's Vivienne. The recorder clicked off where the tape ran out. Nobody moved. The rain kept its own count on the roof. Imara reached out and touched the recorder with one finger, like it was warm. Her braids had come loose at the temple from a night that wouldn't end. She'd spent 2 years believing the margin note in her own hand was the crack that broke the shop. Nefertari watched the belief leave her sister's shoulders and something harder take its place. I wrote it down, Imara said. I wrote pause in my own hand, and I carried that like it was my fault. It was her voice in your ear when you wrote it. 6 years. Imara's finger came off the recorder. She sat across a phone from Dad and smiled and told him to stop, and he heard the smile and kept the tape. He heard her voice cracked once and held. He was smarter than all of us at 3 in the morning, and he never got to say so. He's saying it now. That's her, Nefertari said. 6 years ago, not 2. She called my father 6 years ago and told him to stop paying, and he didn't stop. He kept a copy and kept paying out of his own pocket until he died. And 2 years ago she called you, she looked at Imara, and told you the same thing, and you stopped, because you didn't have Dad's ears, and you had no reason to keep a copy. Imara's hand had gone to her mouth. She's been building this since before he died. She had the design drawn before the first stone. Nefertari's voice didn't shake. That was the thing Deacon would remember later. Telling it didn't shake. She waited for the one of us who'd believe a kind voice on the phone. Junho took a step toward the recorder like it might do something. Play it again. No. Nefertari closed the case around it. It plays once in this room. Next time it plays where it counts. And that would have been the turn. The proof in her hand, the villain named in a dead man's voice, the 2 sisters shoulder to shoulder. That would have been enough to walk into the light on. Except Junho hadn't said the thing he'd come to say. She saw it in him. She'd spent 2 nights learning to read this man the way she read an engine, by the sound of what he wouldn't do, and right now he was a motor holding a knock. Say it, she told him. He looked at her, rain on his shoulders still, from the door. The note on this building, Cordwell Asset Group. What about it? Cordwell is mine. He said it flat, the way you set down something heavy so it doesn't drop. I bought the note back from Meridian this morning, through a fund with no name on it that traces to me. I closed it before we drove to their office. I let you read the chain to Vivian, knowing the top layer had already moved to me. The shop went quiet in a different key. You bought our debt, Nefertari said. I bought it so she couldn't foreclose in 7 days. I bought it to stop the clock. His hands opened. It stops the clock, Nefertari. It's done. She can't take the building. You bought it this morning. Nefertari set the DAD box down on the bench, slow, because her hands wanted to do something else. This morning I stood in that lobby and you told me she'd move today, she'd find the smallest thing I love and buy it. And you already had. You had it in your pocket while I read that chain with my thumb over the name. You let me do the work of finding out who owned us when you already owned us. To protect? Say the rest of it. Her voice cut clean. You decided, alone, what we could carry. Which one of us got to know? Same as her. She pointed at the recorder without looking at it. Same exact move. A careful person, deciding in secret what's good for the people who didn't get a vote. My sister said it in this yard 6 hours ago, with a county man watching. You don't decide alone which of us bleeds, and you went and did it before she finished the sentence. It isn't the same, but he said it quieter, because he'd already heard that it was. It's the same shape. She stepped back from him. 1 step. It was a small room, and it was the widest she'd made it. Deacon shifted his weight by the door and stayed quiet, but his jaw worked once, and she knew he'd back her whatever she chose. Imara had gone still behind the counter. The only sound for a breath was the compressor cycling in the corner, the compressor that would have been Vivienne's in 7 days, running its stubborn little heart out. My father held a note off the books to protect us, and it cost us 6 years of not knowing the ground was already sold. You held a note to protect me, and you'd have let me thank you for stopping a clock you started. I have had one whole life of people loving me by keeping me in the dark, and I am done being loved like a child who can't hold the weight. Deacon, by the door, said nothing, but he moved, half a step, and put himself where she could see him, the second person, present, not deciding for her. Junho took the deed out of his coat, the real one, the Cordwell paper, folded the way he folded everything. He held it out. Then don't thank me, he said. Take it. It's yours to decide what happens to it. I brought it to hand you, not to hold over you. I did the wrong thing to buy time, and I'd do it again to keep her off you, and I'll spend the rest of it earning the right not to. She didn't take it. Not to me, she said. You don't give it to me either. Same lesson, Junho. You put it where it can't be one person's mercy. She looked at her sister. Imara keeps the books. Imara reads the ledger. It goes to a fund that Imara controls, with a board, with a real payment schedule, at a number we can carry, and not $1 of it runs through your hand or mine on a Sunday night with the doors half down. For a moment he just looked at her. Something moved behind his face that wasn't hurt and wasn't relief. It looked, if it looked like anything, like a man being read correctly for the first time in years. An independent fund, he said. Imara's name, my money, her control, an arm's length neither of us reaches across. Documented. Every page. And I audit my own hotels. He said it before she asked, and she caught that too, that he'd already run the road ahead of her. Every courier contract, every subsidiary, every desk that touches a car of mine. If Halcyon moved through my own operations for 6 years I bought and forgot, then the rod is mine to open, in the light, with my name on the finding. Yes, Nefertari said. He folded the deed back into his coat, and it wasn't a retreat, it was a man agreeing to carry a thing to the right door instead of the near one. The distance she'd put between them stayed exactly where it was. She hadn't forgiven him. She'd stopped him from being forgiven cheaply, which mattered more, and both of them knew the difference. Thunder came over slow. Deacon rolled the bay door the rest of the way down against the wet. Nefertari picked up Rebecca Sloane's card off the bench. She left this on purpose, she said. 3 complaints, 1 timestamp, 1 desk. A woman who filed something at 6:14 in the morning and hated her own hands for it. She turned the card over. A cell number, written by hand, small. She wants to be called. It. By you, Imara said. By the person who noticed the timestamp. Nefertari looked at the 3 of them. Her sister, the man she'd stopped, the boy who'd swept these bays for her father. We don't do this in a courtroom in 90 days while the compressor gets carted off. We do it where she planned to cut the ribbon. Junho understood first. The licensing ceremony. Community Standards holds a public certification. Cameras, county seal, a woman in a light suit smiling for the district. She scheduled one for this block. Nefertari's mouth did something that wasn't quite a smile. She scheduled it to hand herself the demolition permit in front of the neighborhood. Let's keep her audience. It rained through the night and cleared by the certification. 4 days, not 7. The fund closed in 3. Imara's name on the top page. A board of 2 lawyers and a retired examiner. A payment number the shop could make on legitimate work, and had already started making, because on the second day a fleet contract came in that nobody had leaned on anyone to sign. A regional courier company, Clean Books, needed a shop that could certify heavy brakes on a night schedule. They'd heard Boyd could read a car in 4 seconds. They didn't know why that was funny. The ceremony was set for the lot 2 doors down, under a county tent, because Vivian had chosen the block herself and never changed the address. Rebecca Sloan came to the shop the morning of it. Alone, no tablet. She stood in the bay in her light suit and told them where the second copy lived, because Nefertari had called the handwritten number and asked one question. Where does a woman that careful keep the things she can't throw away? And Sloan had been waiting 2 years for someone to ask her something she could answer honestly. It lived on a shielded drive in Halcyon's compliance vault, the one place an auditor would never look because compliance was supposed to be the clean room. A file of instructions, scripts, 2 calls, 6 years apart, to a shop on the east side. Sloan had seen it because Sloan had been made to file the complaints and had kept her own timestamp. She'll say I'm disgruntled, Sloan said. She'll say I forged it to save my job. She won't get to the microphone, Nefertari said. They walked the 2 doors down at 11. Vivian was already there, black high collar, the crown of braids, a certificate in a leather folder she meant to be photographed holding. Hande Jin stood a pace behind her left shoulder, sunglasses off, which was new. The district councilwoman was there for the seal. Cameras from 2 local outlets because a woman who owned the block had made calls to make sure of it. She'd built her own audience, exactly as Nefertari had wanted. Sloan took the podium to open the certification and did not read the script in her folder. She read the timestamp instead. 3 agency complaints, 6:14 a.m., 1 desk. She named the desk. Then she stepped aside and did the thing that was hers to do, the only lever a licensing officer holds. She suspended the demolition permit, pending an integrity review, live, into the county's own microphone, and set the folder down. Vivian moved toward the podium the way she'd moved through every room, certain the floor would hold. Nefertari met her at the steps. Your girl, Vivian started. I'm not the demonstration, Nefertari said. I'm the mechanic, watch. She'd set it up on the workbench they'd rolled out under the tent, because a certification is a public technical demonstration, and nobody could bar a licensed shop from demonstrating on its own permit day. The black sedan sat beside it, plate ending in 44. The transmitter she and Junho had left Lev for 2 nights. The leash they'd kept sat in a clear evidence sleeve under the lamp. Beside it, the recorder from the DAD box. Beside that, a laptop cabled to a shielded drive that Rebecca Sloan had signed out of the Halcyon vault at 8 that morning with a valid administrative review order, because a woman who wants to be called leaves the card and then does the paperwork. Nefertari worked the way she worked a car, with the customer lying over the top of it. She pulled the transmitter's guts up on the screen, the cheap body, the expensive brain, the frequency it reported to. She matched the frequency to a receiver logged in Halcyon's own maintenance records, the ones Junho's audit had opened 2 days before, his name on the finding. Then she played 11 seconds of the recorder. A woman's voice, 6 years thin. Stop the automatic payments, Mr. Boyd. It's Vivian. Then she opened the drive. The scripts came up on the screen the cameras could see. 2 calls, 6 years apart. A shop on the east side. The default that was reported to Junho the same month the shop was told to pause. The same hand on both sides of the same wall, in a file kept in the room nobody audits. A camera light swung to her hands, because her hands were the only thing in the tent that never hesitated. She narrated it the way she'd narrate a repair to an owner who wanted to argue. Plain, in order, each claim bolted to a thing you could see on the screen. No lawyer language. Just cause and effect. The way an engine tells you the truth if you stop talking over it. The councilwoman leaned in. One of the reporters stopped filming Vivian and started filming the laptop. You built the deal to be bugged, Nefertari said. And she said it to the microphone the county had brought, not to Vivian. You built the default to be found 2 years late. You called a careful man and told him to stop paying, and when he wouldn't, you waited for his daughter, who had no reason to keep a tape, and you kept the copy you couldn't throw away in the one room you thought was clean. Vivian didn't reach for the podium again. The certainty went out of her posture the way heat goes out of a rail. No shouting, no scene. Han Dae-jin had already stepped back from her shoulder, and when the review order came out, he didn't accept service on anyone's behalf. He'd been Junho's the whole time, planted close, the hand that carried the pouch and reported the frequency, and he closed the last door himself by simply moving one pace to the other side of the tent. The councilwoman took her seal off the table. It ended without a hand raised. The permit died on the county's own record. The integrity review became a real one, with real names, and Cordwell, the fund with Amara's signature on it now, not Junho's, held a note on a building that its own board voted to restructure at a number a working shop could pay. Vivian stopped once beside Nefertari on her way out. Clothes, the way she'd stood in the yard when she'd said the jacket was the most expensive thing this woman would ever own. She looked for the thing she'd found before, the mop, the girl with opinions, and it wasn't there to find. You kept the tape, Vivian said, low, only for her. My father kept it, Nefertari said. I just pressed play. Vivian left the way she'd come, on foot, past the plate that read her the day she lost the block. She read nothing aloud this time. They kept the shop. The fleet contract paid the note and then some, and on the money that was left, Imara did the books and Nefertari did the thing Deacon had said in the dark 8 days before, the thing she'd carried like the folded letter. She cleared the third bay and put in 6 stools and a rack of engines that ran wrong on purpose. She called it a school when Imara made her put a name on the flyer. A room full of women who could learn to hear a car. The first Saturday, 4 came. A nurse off nights, a mother with a boy who needed watching, 2 girls from the corner who'd never been let near an engine. Nefertari stood one of them at the lift and put her hand on the fender and told her to close her eyes and say what she heard. And the girl said nothing for a long minute and then said, quietly, like a confession, "It clicks when it shouldn't." And Nefertari smiled the way her father used to, with the whole face, and said, "Now you can hear it. You can't unhear it. That's the job." The second Saturday, 9 came. Deacon taught the electrical because he'd earned the second stool. The letter she'd carried for 11 days, the one that started, "I need you to know it isn't your fault," she gave to Amara at last, handed it across the counter, and watched her sister read a permission she'd never have to use. And Amara folded it and put it in the green book, between the pages, where the family kept the things it wouldn't throw away. Marcus Bell came back the 3rd week, sober and furious about what had been put in his drink, and drove nights again. He kept the corporate runs. He said the pay was better and the waits were long, and he didn't ask why Nefertari smiled at that. Junho audited his hotels down to the couriers and put his name on every finding. And it cost him, and he paid it, and the $5 billion died in a settlement that spared everyone the theater of a trial. He didn't buy anything else in secret. He learned, slowly, in a shop that smelled of grease and coffee, that mercy handed down is just control with better manners. On a Friday, near closing, a black sedan pulled into the lot, with the plate ending 44, retired from the fleet, bought at auction by a man who'd stopped folding things. Nefertari came out wiping her hands. He didn't get in the back. He opened the passenger door and sat down in the front, beside her, and waited while she finished the car on the lift, because he'd finally understood that the seat you take is the whole argument. She got in when the last bolt was torqued. She started the engine and listened to it a second, the way her father taught, and it was clean. "Where to?" she said. "You're driving," Junho said. "I'm just in the seat." She pulled out of the lot with her sister's name on the deed and her father's tape in the drawer, and a school lit up behind her, and for the first time in 11 days the letter in her pocket was somebody else's to keep. She didn't look back at the sign. She didn't have to. It said Boyd and daughter, and it was still theirs, and the man in the front seat had learned to ride where she could see him. If this story moved you, Stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever kept a place alive with your own hands, the way Nefertari kept her father's garage running, while someone with power decided you weren't worth the truth? When a message in your father's name turned out to be a lie, would you have found the courage to lead the room and expose it yourself? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, truth, and justice, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.